This is the Dos Cero podcast, a weekly show devoted to football in Mexico, the U.S., and beyond. If you are a Pocho, Puma, Regio, Chiva, Cholo, Fresa, Tigre, Tapatío, Chilango, or even a Methodist, pull up a chair, crack open a cold one, and enjoy the next 90 minutes of heated football debate. Thus begins the Dos Cero podcast. Okay, this is a Dos Cero podcast. Looks like we have a bit of a double audio running there. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but thank you for joining us. We are live on YouTube, as you guys know, and we're also going to be recording this and be putting this on iTunes. Someone probably needs to mute their mic. I'm not sure who that is.
Oh, that's me.
Mute your mic. Yeah. Okay. Well, there we are. I think that we should be good now. A little audio mix-up there. But as we were saying, this is a Dos Cero podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to join the chat on YouTube and let us know. And I'm confusing myself with the double audio. I'm not sure what's going on.
I think that's on your end. I don't hear anything.
Yeah, John, I also don't hear double audio.
Oh, so it's just me?
Yeah.
I believe it is.
Oh. Okay, well, I guess I will have to deal with listening to double audio. Fair enough. Okay, anyway, as I was saying. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. As you guys know, it's a World Cup qualifying week all over in this part of the world anyway, with South America and Central America. And Mexico will be playing up in Vancouver against Canada in their semifinal qualifying group. And we have with us tonight a gentleman who is someone that is very familiar with Canadian soccer. His name is Grant Sturridge. He operates the Canadian Soccer News website, and we wanted to bring him on so that he can tell us a little bit more about Canada, because to be perfectly honest, it's not a national team that we may here at the Dos Cero podcast follow as closely as probably we should, but we certainly want to get their insight to them, because I think the things are starting to change for Canada, and then hopefully they'll start playing a little bit more up to their capabilities. So we want to thank Grant for joining us. Thank you, Grant, for coming on the show.
Hey, can you guys, everyone hear me?
We hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for having me on the show.
Well, Grant, I guess the first question that we wanted to ask you is, what should we expect from Canada?
Well, you sort of alluded to it, but there definitely is what I would describe as kind of a cautious optimism around the Canadian team now amongst Canadian fans. We sort of our manager we have right now, Benito Floro, has been very successful in bringing new players into the team. That's really been the biggest story when it comes to Canada over about the past year and a half. We here in Canada, with our national soccer team, have always sort of fallen victim to players who have the option to play for Canada choosing to play for other teams. But in the past year and a half, we've had Junior Hoylett, who plays for QPR in England, Tesho Akindele. We had just one recently announced, Scott Arfield. He plays for he's playing for Burnley in England, and even Stephen Vittoria. He's a defender as well. So really, we've had this group of players who, for the first time ever, it feels like players are actually choosing to play for Canada. And because of that, and the two positive results we got in the first round of qualifying, I would say that for Canada fans, we're cautiously optimistic about this game in Vancouver, thinking maybe, just maybe, if everything goes our way, we can get a draw.
So a draw for you in Vancouver then would that be a victory for the Canadians then for him to manage to
If
get the 1 point?
Yeah, I would if we were able to get a draw in Vancouver, I would definitely describe that as a victory. I think that would be seen as a huge, dare I say, massive result, getting a draw against Mexico in
Now,
Vancouver.
would you, as a Canadian, would you prefer for Canada to get the draw like they did when they played 6 years ago in Edmonton, where they, a group of college kids essentially gave Mexico a team that was desperate to get any kind of result on the road, and they played to a 2-2 draw, or do you, or is it going to be one of these games where Canada's going to play for a 0-0 and hang on for dear life?
Now, first, that was when Sven Goran Eriksson was with Mexico.
That is correct, and
Yeah.
that was the point that they desperately had to have. If they didn't have that point, they wouldn't have qualified even for the Hex.
Quick note: I actually looked this up before I came on here. Sven Goran Eriksson now coaching in or managing in Thailand.
That seems very appropriate
How
considering.
the mighty have fallen. But getting to your question, well, I mean, an exciting draw would be great, sure. I mean, I think that would be fun for everyone involved. But if it does end up being a draw, I would expect a 0-0 draw. I mean, I think Benito Floro has definitely. We sort of have a nickname up here. We call it Floro Ball, and he has been very upfront about how the group of players he has is not really that skilled, and his main sort of goal is to make Canada very, very difficult to score against. And he's been really sort of, it almost feels like his entire tenure up to now, with all these sort of really boring defensive games we've had to sit through, it's all been leading up to this, to playing against Mexico, to finally where a situation where it would really benefit us to kind of go for this approach and try to grind out this 0-0 draw. So we'll see if they can do it.
Now, who on the Canadian side, outside from the striker for the place for Orlando, should we keep an eye on as the game progresses? You mentioned that the defense is where Benito wants the focus. Are there any couple of defenders that you've noticed over the past, well, I guess since they've started qualifying with their games against Belize, have really stood out, and players that really have an opportunity to stifle the Mexican offense?
Well, so two things here. I'll say just in terms of players to watch beyond Kyle Larin. I mean, you have Junior Hoylett, who was seen a big victory for the Canadian program to get him to come back and say, yes, I'll play for Canada. We have to remember that a few seasons ago he was kind of a big deal, and there was talk that he might actually eventually play for England. His star has faded a bit in the UK since then, but for us, he's arguably our best offensive player. And that you would sort of watch for him, and you're also going to watch for this guy Scott Arfield, who actually is setting foot in Canada for the first time ever to play this game. His father is from Toronto, but he was born in Scotland. He played for Scotland for the youth teams growing up, and then he decided his future wasn't with the Scottish national team, so he has made the switch. So if he, in fact, it would be his debut for the team, but a lot of people think because he has the quality and he's that good, he will get the start. So if I was watching from the Mexico fan perspective, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on those two. In terms of sort of the defense, I think that's where we're seeing some question marks for the Canadian team that remain. We're still not entirely sure who is going to start in goal. There's some questions around the central defenders. We have this young kid, Donnell Henry, who plays with the youth team in West Ham. He has just kind of recovered from an injury, and there's talk about whether he's going to get the start, or it will be Dejan Jakovic, another guy who's played for Canada for a long time, but he's in his mid-30s. So, in as much as Floro has this defensive kind of posture, and that's how he approaches the game, I think in terms of the Canada team, where the biggest question marks are actually on that back line.
So it seems like that's where the nerves are going to be for the Canadian fans is
Oh,
if they're expecting a defensive game and then they have a couple of defensive slip-ups, I can see where you guys might, you know, reach for the pack of cigarettes a little early. I totally understand that.
Well, no, I have to say we're definitely probably something. It is Vancouver, so maybe even something stronger than tobacco. They might be reaching for there to calm their nerves when
So
it
you're saying
comes
that
to this
BC
game.
Place could turn into Bob Marley Stadium in Kingston by the first
Exactly.
20 minutes? Well,
Oh, definitely.
sounds like I picked a good game to go to. All right, that should
Well,
be
yeah,
interesting. Yeah,
fun
should
for
be a lot
both
of
sets
fun.
of fans.
Right. No, I did listen to the press conference yesterday that the two coaches had there in Vancouver, and I noticed that the Canadian coach Florio said something that I found very interesting, and this is something that I would want to ask you as well as far as just Canadian soccer. He said that listen, it's hard enough for any team in the country to put together a national team. He said we have to do it
Mhm.
without the strength of our own league. He says that we're very
Right.
limited when it comes to that. So my question to you is, and I think we've talked about this in the past. I know that there are some Canadian teams in MLS, but what would it take for Canada to have their own league? And would the Canadian fans even want their own league, or would they rather be part of MLS?
Well, I mean, interestingly enough, when you sort of alluded to it at the beginning, I should just one quick note. I personally don't operate CanadianSoccerNews.com. I'm a contributing writer there. We have the managing editor is a fellow called Dwayne Rollins, and he has actually done a lot of reporting over the past year about a plan to have just this, a Canadian league. Now, the details kind of remain sketchy. It seems like it would be very closely aligned, interestingly enough, with the Canadian Football League. You guys are from Texas. You enjoy your football. I'm sure you've all heard of the CFL. If not,
Absolutely,
actually,
that's what we're Longhorns that don't make the NFL go straight to the CFL. So
right.
absolutely, sure.
There you go. There you go. So sort of the from what the details that have been reported and have kind of leaked out, it would be a league. I don't know, 6 to 8 teams. It would sort of slot in somewhere under MLS, alongside NASL. Um, it would be up. The teams would play out of the CFL stadiums, sort of another source of revenue for the CFL owners. That sort of the existing infrastructure is there. Um, and this is sort of the next great hope. Now, it just remains to be seen. I mean, the last sort of Canadian league, I believe, would have folded in the early 1990s, and it's just we just face a lot of obstacles in Canada in terms of getting our own league. I mean, soccer is actually a very popular sport here. It's just that many people choose to support either European soccer or kind of their sort of the team where maybe they originally came from or where their parents came from. So getting this consensus and this support for soccer in Canada has always been difficult. And then you have there's a lot of travel, you have the costs to factor in. The other issue would be, so we get this league, and then it's pretty clear that uh, the MLS teams are going to stay in the MLS. So right away you have this Canadian league that would be seen, I think, sort of sort of a step below MLS, so kind of a minor league. Would fans in Canada come out to support that league? It's hard to say. So there are plans to make it happen. It's just really whether or not it will succeed is kind of a huge question mark.
Okay. One last question. I'll let you know it's getting late up there in Toronto, but
No,
I'd,
no problem.
I'd also like to get a question in too,
yeah, of
John,
course,
if you don't
absolutely.
mind.
I want to open up to the panel. Absolutely. Please, Daniel, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, looking beyond the two Mexico matches, who do you see as your biggest competition to qualifying into the Hex?
Well, so as you know, we got up to a decent start. We beat Honduras at home, which for us was a very important victory because many people here, I was going to say, are still stinging, but I think the better way to describe it would be permanently scarred from this 8-1 loss we suffered against Honduras in the last qualifying cycle. We just needed to go to Honduras. I believe all we needed to do was get a draw, and we were through. We were finally back to the Hex, and we ended up losing 8-1. And it was an unmitigated disaster. So as soon as the teams came out, as soon as the draw was held, and we saw Honduras, and we immediately knew that it was them. I mean, certainly no disrespect to El Salvador. I know they've had their issues with their team recently, but I think most of the fans here in Canada were just immediately zeroed in on Honduras and felt that, okay, these are it's going to come down to beating them. And then, in the next sort of round of 2 games, we have to go down there. And I think most Canada fans are, deep in their sort of hearts, they realize we're not going to get any points against Mexico, so we're really almost looking ahead to the next 2 games, and that game in Honduras is going to be huge.
Anybody else have any questions for our wonderful Canadian guest?
Yeah, how are you doing? This is Ronnie from Soccer Chronicle.
Hi, Ronnie, how are you? I'm well.
Good. Well, one question. Well, Canada actually is always going to be kind of like a sore spot because of the 2000 Gold Cup.
Right.
So it's just now just wanted to throw that out there. That cost really my favorite coach La Puente his job basically. No, but no, I'm kidding.
I didn't realize we were going to dig up such old wounds.
I know.
Yes, it hurts. It still stings. It still stings. No, but no. The question I wanted to ask: how much did Floro's experience in Mexico basically take into account when the Canadian Federation hired him? Because as some of you guys know, Floro coached in Monterrey, and he's very familiar with Mexican football.
Well, I mean, to be perfectly upfront, I don't think I have any real insight into how in the end how the CSA made their decision. However, I can tell you that they certainly made public, as part of their search, that they wanted a coach with experience. They wanted a coach preferably who could speak Spanish, and they wanted a coach who had experience in CONCACAF. And I think Benito Floro, immediately, because of his time with Monterrey, immediately ticked all those boxes. So certainly, I think his time in Mexico would have influenced their decision. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, for some of the younger viewers, Floro basically he actually laid a lot of the groundwork for Monterrey, because after him, a couple coaches after him, that's when Monterrey started defining success. I mean, Floro, Benito, he's a very good coach. He's a very good coach. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's also the one that debuted De Nigris. So is Pern with us right now?
He actually had a very fond words to say. I was watching Televisa, it's on YouTube as well, talking about De Nigris. And if you don't know, Tano De Nigris was a player who got his start at Monterrey when Floro was there, and then was blackballed. He ended up finishing his career in Turkey and SA finishing because unfortunately he had a heart murmur that wasn't detected, and he ended up dying while he was over there.
Right. Okay.
So this happened, and then his brother just played outside of his mind for the next 6 months or so, and we all thought that he had a chance to make the World Cup before he got hurt. So yeah, it's and Floro, of course, we always have to remember that Floro also is a coach of Real Madrid, so it's not like Canada is just they'll pick the name out of the phone book to coach the team. They picked a really good coach. And
to be fair, in the past, they may have just done exactly that to pick their coach, but anyway.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I think that this is Christian. As you were, did you have a question?
If you don't mind. Yeah, just a quick one. Just to elaborate a little bit on what Ronnie just mentioned. Canada has the history with Mexico is a little interesting, especially over the last 15, 20 years. When you say that, as a fan, you think that a 0-0 or a 1-1 or any variation of a tie would be considered a victory at home, without really, especially referencing the numbers, which I don't have with me. I do believe that Canada does have a pretty favorable record against Mexico. I mean, dating back to the 70s, we're talking maybe 4 or 5 games played in Canada. Especially with what we've seen from Florio and the way that the team has sort of gelled and grown and sort of dug their heels and developed that sort of defensive sort of rigidity that he's looking for. I mean, as a fan, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if Canada pulled off a tie, but I do want to know why you would think that would be a victory, because I mean, like I said, looking back at so even as the sample size as small as it is, Canada does have some semblance of success versus Mexico at home.
I mean, I guess all I can. I mean, you're definitely correct. You're right. I mean, Canada has. I believe there was a tie in was it the 2008 as part of the 2010 qualifying cycle, and I think there was another tie in the 1990s. I'm also a bit, fuzzy on the numbers, but absolutely. They have been able to get results against Mexico at home, but the thing you have to understand about supporting the Canadian national team is that it's just been such a dumpster fire. It's just been filled with so much disappointment, and I mean, we didn't even qualify for the Copa America, the Centenario, right? It's just we're just so sort of we always expect the worst. I guess I don't know how else to explain it. So we've got two decent results so far in the cycle, and it just for us to get a point off Mexico would. I mean, I think everyone would be over the moon. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've heard
Yeah,
the
I mean
interviews
that's
the players have been doing this week, and they've been saying, "Oh yeah, maybe we can win." But I think really a draw would, yeah, we'd be very happy with that.
If you expect the worst out of your team, then I think that you should seriously consider
rooting for
becoming a
Mexico.
Chivas fan. I think that's the team for you. If that's how you want to, if you want to live and die by your soccer, I think that Chivas is the team for you. Grant, one last question, and then I'll let you know. I'll let you
Sure,
go. Uh,
sure.
One thing I've noticed about soccer here in the U.S. is, especially when it comes between the men's and women's, is that because the women's soccer is relatively well, obviously very successful. They just
Right.
won the World Cup in Canada. It was their third World Cup. That it's something that's extremely. I don't want to say it's popular, but it seems like it does capture the nation's uh, imagination when they play. Is that happening with the Canadian women's team as well? Did you feel that because of the success, the Canadians women's team is a little more popular than the men's just because of the fact that they've had more success?
I would say unquestionably that the women's team is infinitely more popular than the men's team. You have to understand. I mean, was it the 2012 Olympics in London? We almost beat the U.S. It was this crazy gold medal game. They had, I don't know, the infamous sort of the 6-second rule about the Canadian keeper got the penalty for holding the ball. And I mean, that was watched by millions of people. And I mean, there's nothing that sort of gets Canadians riled up or more excited or more kind of feeling proud than beating the United States at something. So ever since the London Olympics, and then just all the sort of press around and hype around hosting the Women's World Cup, the women's team has, in terms of like the casual sort of sports fan, by far the women's team would be far more popular, more well known. I mean, we had Christine Sinclair, arguably one of the best players in the world. I mean, she is on television commercials in Canada, which is unheard of for a Canadian men's team player, right? Um, Now, I mean, if the women's game is a bit different. There's not as many countries that are as good. I guess is one way of putting it. So they relative to everyone else, the Canadian team is just much better. Now, if the men's team were to go on some kind of a run, maybe make the World Cup, get out of their group, I mean, who knows? You might start to see that change. If we were to have a young kid go over to Europe and start lighting up a league there, then that tips the equation too. But
Does
definitely for
Owen
the moment,
Hargraves not count?
I'm sorry.
Does Owen Hargraves not count?
No, Owen Hargraves does definitely not count.
I got a question on that comment you made.
Okay, Albert.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Just a
I got a
on that.
question, Ram.
I also have a question. Another one. I don't know if
Sure,
you
I'm
might
not-
stay
I'm not
on
in
a
a-
little
I'm not in
longer.
a-
Well, let Albert ask his question first. Let Albert ask
Sorry.
his question first. Go, Albert.
Because you mentioned the popularity of the sport growing after, for example, if Canada made it past their group or into the World Cup even.
Mhm.
I sort of compare or look at the United States soccer and the success that they've had. They've been to World Cups, but the soccer, it has grown, but it's still not popular like it is in other sports or in other countries. Is
Right.
Canada, and I see that because of competing with NFL and NBA. Is there that type of thing in Canada where soccer is never going to be the number one sport because there's hockey and then there's football, or is there a real possibility that Canada could beat out those other sports?
I mean, it's a very interesting question. I mean, hockey has sort of holds a place for many Canadians that I think at least not in my lifetime will be challenged. mean, it's kind of the one sport we're the best at. So while more kids play soccer than hockey, I think hockey remains, it holds this sort of special place, even amongst people who can't skate, right? That being said, I mean, we had, just recently, you had the Blue Jays, for example, went on this amazing run, and I mean, there was record television audiences in Canada for a sport like baseball, which has always been popular. You have a lot of really good young Canadian players, who are coming up in NCAA basketball right now. Andrew Wiggins, I believe he was the Rookie of the Year last year with Minnesota. So there are definitely other sports that are kind of, it's more so in Western Canada, but we have the CFL, it's hanging in there as well. So there's a lot of sports that are kind of at a level just below sort of where hockey is. But I don't think that soccer will ever become the sport. But I certainly think, like, especially in a city like Toronto, soccer is very popular. I mean, you have the bars are full with people watching European soccer in the mornings. I think that soccer there's a lot of room to grow. It may never sort of be the sport, but sort of a sport. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Juan, did you have a question? Juan Uribe? Question for Grant Sturridge, our resident Canadian for the night.
Hey, Grant. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. Yeah, but my question for Grant was, let's say the Canadians women team won a World Cup. Would you wear your jersey with the World Cup star proudly?
Oh, of course. I definitely. If the Canadian women won a World Cup, I would, definitely be. I mean, and I think most people in the country would too. Yeah, it would be if the Canadian, especially at the last Olympics, if the Canadian women had managed to win that gold medal, I mean, I think people would still be talking about it as one of sort of the greatest Canadian sports achievements ever. That would definitely be a big deal.
A sub question. Follow-up question.
Sure.
Do the French and the English-speaking parts of the country, do they both support the women's team, or is there any cultural divide there? Like, do some of them support France or anything like that?
Yeah, that's actually kind of a fascinating question too. I think it's kind of hard to say. I mean, well, for starters, I don't really think a lot of people in Quebec would support France because they kind of have some historical animosity that maybe not a lot of people know about, but often French people from France are not that popular in Quebec. I think I'll put it this way: for both of the national teams, and this is I unfortunately don't speak French myself, but I think that amongst the people in Quebec, there would be more sort of muted support for the Canadian national teams in general, whether it be the men or the women. I just think it's kind of it's a long, complicated history. That's not to say, I mean, yes, I think there definitely is some support for Canada, but I mean, you guys must know they've had this kind of separatist movement there for a long time. I mean, it's a bit more ambiguous. It's complicated. It's complicated.
You know, speaking of Quebec, I was at the FC Dallas Montreal game over the weekend, and in the press conference, the Montreal coach actually answered the majority of his questions in French from the Montreal press, which I thought was fascinating, and he didn't translate. Whereas when Oscar Pareja, who was the FC Dallas coach, someone like me would ask him a question in Spanish, he would answer in Spanish, and then he would answer he would answer in English. Anybody else have any questions for Grant?
Yes, sir.
Fire away, Daniel.
Yeah.
So, from a fan's perspective, I guess I'm curious as to how you personally feel about MLS, and now that there's a potential for a league. Do you resent MLS on some level, or because in some ways it's going to be the measuring stick, or on some level it is the domestic league at this point. So I'm just kind of curious how like the typical Canadian fan feels about this whole MLS and domestic soccer.
Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, certainly some of the TFC fans resent the owners in Toronto, for example, but that's an entirely different story. I don't think there would be resentment for MLS. I mean, say what we will about MLS and what it's done or what it hasn't done for Canadian soccer. I mean, you now have soccer in the three biggest Canadian cities, where you have thousands upon thousands of people going. And I would argue now that the MLS teams in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal are now more popular than the CFL teams there. So it's the MLS teams in Canada, I think, are helping to grow the sport. Now, if this new league does get off the ground, it really remains to be seen what kind of a relationship they will have with MLS. I think in Canada, like many countries, you have people who don't live in the big cities, always kind of have a little bit of, like, I don't know if resentment is the right word, but sort of, those hot shots from Toronto, blah, blah, blah. So there might actually be some pride in being part of this, like, a real Canadian soccer league, not like the MLS guys who are just part of an American league. But, I mean, that's just me kind of talking out of my ass.
Well, if that happens, I will support the team from Thunder Bay. I promise.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'll support a Canadian team every single time when they go up against an MLS team.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing too. I mean, so does this Canadian league, would it be in the CONCACAF Champions League? There's a lot of questions, right?
It should.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Ronnie, did you have one last question for our Canadian friend?
Well, not necessarily a question. Just what's his name? Christian wanted the stats. With Canada and Mexico, had actually 29 matches played, 4 wins for the Canadians, 17 for the Mexicans, and 8 draws.
4 wins, wow. Okay.
So I mean that's
Yeah,
senior.
I told you, Grant, that Grant had asked me some questions about how when Mexico and Canada, what kind of relationship they had. I said that before the U.S., at least in my lifetime, the biggest rivals for Mexico were always Costa Rica and Canada because they were always the
Right.
teams that Mexico the closest. And so yeah, it's
Well, yeah, the last
makes sense.
last time Canada went to the World Cup was actually '86 World Cup
right.
in
Right.
Mexico.
And
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
France run for their money and that had to wait for Jean-Pierre Papin to bail out the French. But and I remember that '93 game as well because even though Mexico had steamrolled in that I guess the final round, it wasn't really hex. I can't remember how many teams there were. They lost in the Cuscatlan, and that was back in the day when they only got 2 points for a win instead of 3. So when Canada got that early goal against Mexico, Mexico was out of the World Cup. It was a really nerve-wracking game, and they were able to come from behind and win it. But I mean that was a very serious. That was probably one of the toughest games that Mexico ever won. Was that game they had to come from behind in Toronto.
I believe that was at Varsity Stadium in Toronto, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugo was on that. Ugo was playing, and I think Abuelo Cruz scored the game-winning goal.
Yeah,
I think.
Ugo got the equalizer, and Ugo
Yeah.
set up Abuelo Cruz for the equalizer. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And
No, it was great. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Sure. Well, one last thing. What is your prediction? Please.
Well, before I was going to ask you guys the exact same. Why don't you guys go first? I'm curious. What do you honestly think?
I think a draw in Canada and I think a win in Mexico.
Okay.
I agree. I think it'll be much like that. Probably a 0-0, maybe a 1-1 in Canada on Friday, and then Mexico will pull it out, maybe 2-3, 3-0 in Mexico City.
Yeah, I think a 1-1 draw in Vancouver, and I think Mexico will equal out down in the Azteca, and I think the Bluebirds will start showing up a little bit, but I think they'll win 2-0 at the Azteca.
So am I the only one who has Mexico winning?
I guess so.
I got Mexico winning also.
A modest 1-0.
I think 2-0 in Canada.
Juan?
Okay.
Mexico 3-0. Sorry, Grant.
So I had at least 3 Mexico fans saying there's going to be a draw in Vancouver.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think you guys are just trying to kind of stay on side of karma, is what I think.
No, I think Florida's a good coach. I think Florida's a very good coach, and I think he's going to play the cat and mouse game in Vancouver, and I think he's going to try to make it difficult for Mexico. Basically just I don't want to say they're going to park the bus, but
Right.
I think they're going to play compact, and I think they're going to try to just try to keep the game very, very close. I think they'll play a 0-0 or 1-1. I don't think it's going to be I don't think they're Mexico can open up the floodgates and go out there winning 3-0 or 2-0. I think it's going to be close.
Yeah,
Um,
Ronnie's got a point. This the kind of style that Canada is gonna or has been developing, and that really sort of very compact, lines in midfield and defense. It's not a style that suits Mexico, and it's probably gonna complicate things a little bit. And if Canada's smart, I'd say if the rumors are that Rafa Marquez is going to be playing in Canada, which I think most of us hope it's not the case. If he does end up playing, if Canada's smart, they could. There's a couple things they could exploit there, So I'm not unconfident.
One question: What's the turf at the stadium? Is it
it's
artificial?
Yeah, artificial turf.
So yeah, okay, well,
It's
all
field
right.
turf, yeah.
It's field
Yeah.
turf. Oh, hey, also one last question to our
Sure.
Canadian.
Sure.
Which other Canadian cities are looking to get into MLS?
Into MLS.
Yes, because you have Montreal, you have Toronto, and you have the Vancouver Whitecaps. Which other ones are trying to make a bid for or show interest in?
I have honestly not heard that any are. I would just assume at this point that MLS would be kind of finished with Canada.
Okay.
I
'Cause they got
just don't see any other cities big enough or kind of important enough for them to bother.
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
really, really hurting the feelings of your friends in Winnipeg right now. I just want you to know.
Hey, hold on a second, guys. I was born and raised in Winnipeg, so yeah. But sadly, I don't think Winnipeg is going to get an MLS team.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Grant. We really appreciate it. And but before you go,
Can I give my
Give us your
prediction?
prediction. Yes, please, by all means.
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna say that it will be kind of a boring game in Vancouver, probably 0-0 into the half, and then I'm gonna go with a 1-0 Mexico victory in Vancouver, and 3-0 at Azteca for Mexico.
Wow.
Right.
Cool. Wow.
I wish it weren't so, but
Well, I personally think that Canada has a real solid chance to make the hex, and let's hope for everybody's sake that they do, because it's always nice to have the more traditional teams in the hex. It's in my personal opinion, but that's just me. But anyway, thanks very much for joining us, Grant. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining the Dos Aceto podcast, and we'll keep in touch, and hopefully we'll get to do this again when Canada plays Mexico in the hex.
oh, that would absolutely make my day. That would be perfect. Thanks so much, you guys. That was
Yeah, thank
great.
you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Okay, cheers. Cheers. Good night.
Good night. That was Grant Sturridge, one of the contributing writers to Canadian Soccer News, giving us his insight for the upcoming Mexico-Canada match that's going to be played at BC Place at 10 Eastern on Friday night, Good Friday, and then, of course, they will have a reciprocal match at the Azteca, where Albert El Chiquiscampa will be. He's not in the press box, but he does have tickets. By the way, Albert, if you're in Querétaro, the game's at 7. Leave at 2, and I think you might make it. Leave at 2, because the traffic in Mexico City. Well, actually, it's a vacation week, so maybe if you left at 2:30, I think you'll be okay, because the traffic is pretty crazy. Well, gentlemen, what did y'all think? We got a nice, fresh Canadian perspective. I thought it was very, very interesting, very elucidating, very eye-opening. It was a nice, refreshing conversation we had with Grant.
Yeah, it sounded like a mini U.S. sort of.
Yeah.
A mini U.S. soccer type of thing.
And I'm proud of y'all for not throwing in a dick joke. Thank you very much. We kept it civil. It was nice.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, there's always
The night is young, man. Don't rule it out.
That's right. Okay, so I believe that Ronnie, before we got on, wanted to get MLS out of the way. For those of you that don't know, 3 of us were able to attend MLS matches over the weekend. I was at the FC Dallas match in Frisco versus Montreal. Ronnie was able to catch the Philadelphia. Who did they play? Ronnie, Philadelphia, and
They played
Toronto.
against. No, they played against.
Chicago. New England Revolution. New England Revolution.
Yeah, the Revolution. The Revolution.
And then Juan was able to catch the El Clásico Californiano LA
Exactly.
Galaxy and San Jose. What are they? Clash, Earthquakes. I forget what they were.
Earthquakes.
Earthquakes.
San Jose
San,
Earthquakes, I think.
San Jose Earthquake. Was that? And that was at the. You're right there in Carson as well. So we know that Juan once again tweeted us pictures of his delightful pregame meal, which looked frankly absolutely delicious. My pregame meal of shepherd's pie was, I think it was whatever the kitchen had left over from the last game from last year.
What goes into a
And
shepherd's pie, man? I've never actually had that.
dude, all
Meat.
I have to say about shepherd's pie is it's English food. That's all I have to say. I don't think I have to say anything else. And Ronnie, I heard that you got something more than pretzels. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't need it though, because I mean, it's meat. You know, I just ate the Brussels sprouts and the
You're not a
pretzels.
meat eater.
You know, vegan diet.
What's
You're a
He's
that?
vegan.
watching his figure. Don't
Are
mind.
you a vegan?
He'll
I
take the
wouldn't say
occasional
I'm like
chorizo, but
no,
There it is.
no,
Do
no, no.
you
I
still
wouldn't say I'm
down
like
with the cucumber?
100% vegan, but I mean, I'm not a fanatic about it. Like a vegan won't consume any animal products. I mean, sometimes people cooking like a beef, stock or vegetable or chicken stock or stuff like that. I'll still eat it, but I prefer, not to. I mean, if I have an option of being 100% vegan, I'll choose 100% vegan.
Interesting. So, Ronnie, tell us your experience about. Actually, we'll ask Juan since he was his second game. Juan, please give us your insight as to not necessarily the game, but just the. I guess I want to talk about like the press experience of attending an MLS game. It was your
Yeah,
second one, so what was different from the first and the second?
you know what? Benjamin pulled the strings this time, and he got me parking, so I didn't have to pay parking, which is, that was nice. Uh,
He's referring to me.
yeah, the first, I think the press lady, she called Ronnie Benjamin, and then he said it's because he's money. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Benjamin is in Ben Franklin.
yeah,
Yeah,
Benjamin. So she's like, she referred to me as Benjamin. I'm thinking, well, she must think I'm money then. Jesus, calls me Benjamin.
Well, maybe that's you give her a Benjamin when you shake her hand. Maybe that's
Ah, bueno.
maybe that's what that is. So your experience got a little better. Now tell us about your post game because it seems like there's only like the chosen few that can even ask Bruce Arena a question. That was the impression that I got. Is that the impression you got?
yeah, because the press officer, I'm not sure his name is not he looked at me and he thought about it and then he regretted it and he went with somebody else. So, I get the feeling from Bruce that he's kind of, it seems like he's done, managing or at least dealing with the press. It's always very short, 1, 2, 3 questions. The visiting manager, he sits there, he takes as many questions as people are willing to throw at him, and most of the time people they don't have any questions. It's like there's only like a couple reporters that even ask interesting questions, and most of the time they're not even about the game. They're about well, I guess they're not about what happened in the game. They're more like like there's one guy that asked them uh, something about.
Hey Juan, I think you're having
Yeah,
technical
I think we're
difficulties.
losing Juan. You may want to reconnect.
Yeah,
Well, it's
reconnect
interesting
once.
that Bruce acts like that because I was at the press conference, which, by the way, and this is something that I'm going to have to talk to FC Dallas about. I had no idea the room where they had the press conference was, and there were no signs of it, no nothing. I was wandering the halls aimlessly like an idiot. Me and this other guy were trying to find it. It turns out that it's like in this unfinished room that they just put the big curtain up that has all the logos on it. I had no idea it was there. There were no signs, there were no PR people directing anybody to show you where to go. It was just a big mess. Luckily, I got there in time, and like I mentioned when we were talking to Grant, the Montreal guy comes in and il parle français comme ça. Et il a dit qu'ils ont perdu parce que and so on. And but he only answered when they asked him in French. He answered, yeah. He responded in French. When they asked him in English, he responded in English. He didn't do both. Now Oscar Pareja comes out, and the folks that are asking him questions, there were a couple of obviously veterans, but most of them were, kids just out of college. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it just seems like I'm not sure if they're really watching the game, or at least watching the game that I was watching because of the questions they were asking. So at the very end, I was, I finally worked up the courage to ask him a question, and I asked him. The question was, what did he do to neutralize Beatti? Because Beatti is the guy at Montreal, and for the first 10 or 15 minutes, he had a major influence on the game, and then he just disappeared. So I asked him, what it was that they did, and he gave me a really solid answer. And of course, he gave it to me in English and Spanish first, and then he said, "For those of you who don't understand, this is what I said," and he gave the response in English, which I thought was incredibly. I'm not sure if any other MLS coaches do that. I found it incredibly endearing to for him to cultivate a positive relationship with the press. Win or lose, I think the fact that he's able to answer like that, I thought was really interesting. Ronnie, what's it like there at Union?
I've been going to Union games on and off, covering them. But I'd say for 4 or 5 years, man. I mean, it's on and off. It's going to the games. It's actually nice. I mean, I like going to the games. It's a nice atmosphere. It's easy to get to. It's very, very easy to get to the stadium. You're not really waiting a long time in traffic and stuff. Basically just go off 95 south. Well, for me, it's 95 south, and
it's way down in Chester, right?
Yeah, it's down in Chester, and it's a really nice small stadium. As far as access to the players and to the coach, it's I mean, they even ask you when you're going into the locker room, into the men's locker rooms, like, who do you want to talk to? And they're always very nice. The coach, actually, this time, it's funny you say that about Bruce. About the atmosphere over there at the Galaxy, where only certain people can ask the coach. He'll call people from big newspapers and stuff like that. They did that this time. They asked somebody from the Philly, the big Philly newspapers and stuff like that. But normally it's not like that. I mean, you do have access to the coach. You can ask questions. I actually kept my mouth shut this time because, and I think I posted it in the chat in our private chat. But in the press conference, obviously Philadelphia's top of the what is it, top of the Eastern Conference.
Mm-hmm. Right now, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean they're tied with another team. I forget who. And
they're tied with Montreal, I think.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're tied with Montreal. Well, hold on, I'm trying to see where Let me see. All right, this one thing that really caught my eye because, obviously, the game that Philadelphia won, the game 3-0, and one of the first things that the coach says was that he's not happy. He said, look, we talked. Let me see. I'm trying to find my notes here. What he said?
Well, what you posted is he wants 3 guys to crash the box.
Yeah. Before I get to that, hold on.
Wait, hang on. Oh wait, I think you're mad. It's time for Ronnie's rant. Ronnie's rant.
I don't know what we're yelling about!
All right, go ahead.
All right, he basically came out and said, look, I just talked to the guys, and in some ways, obviously, it's great to get a shutout at home. Still wasn't happy with the performance. I think we can play better. I think we can be cleaner with our passes because I've seen it in training. So obviously what he was trying to do is he was trying to set the tone that, they're not being complacent like in, previous years. And he even acknowledged that, it's like, look, I know that we're better right now than we were last year, but that's not saying much because we were horrible last year.
We were bad last year.
Yeah, but one of the
Didn't
things
you
that
get the coach fired?
well, no. One of the questions I asked, and in fact, the press officer didn't even like the fact that I asked him this. I got Hacksworth to admit that he was under under pressure.
Right.
And the dude did get
Well, I mean,
he
he
kind
did
of.
be under pressure because his name is Haxi. He's only worth a hack.
No, but anyhow, one of the things that he said, Jim Curtin, the coach for Philadelphia Union, he says, we talked all preseason about getting three guys running hard in the box at the same time, a real commitment to get in the box on crosses, and I thought we saw that today. There was an aggressive nature, and I can't and I didn't ask, I did like I said, I didn't ask the question because I didn't want to look like I didn't want to sound like a jerk off because obviously they've got two wins, one loss, they're top of the standing.
Sorry, as you were saying.
So but the thing about it is I predict that it's still going to be the same for the Philadelphia Union because I mean if all you're going to do is just send three guys into the box, crash the box, and just send a cross, it's like that's so predictable.
That is interesting that you say that. And honestly, prior to going to this FC Dallas game, every time I've covered an MLS game, whether I'm in a TV truck or if I've gone to the stands, that's the style of play that you see. I mean, it's just go down, they attack down the sides, and the guy will send they'll send a cross in, and sometimes he looks up to see where his guys are. Most of the time he doesn't, and then just hope and pray that somehow, some way, someone's going to get on the other end of it and then stick it in the back of the net. Now FC Dallas, on the other hand, the strength of their team is they have a fantastic midfield. They got this Fabian Castillo guy. They got the guy that scored the goal, whose name is eluding me at the moment. They have a Mexican guy, Ulloa. They have it's a guy from Argentina. But anyway, but with, I mean, they will attack you every which way. They will, they will shoot from outside the box. They'll go down and they'll send crosses in. I mean, they play soccer. They play a very entertaining, visually enticing brand of soccer. And it makes me wonder why other MLS sides, maybe if FC Dallas, if they managed to, they lost in the quarter in the semifinals last year, if they managed to make it to MLS Cup and maybe even win it, maybe we can start seeing more of that influence among other MLS sides because I do think that it's that especially in MLS, I think that's something that
Well,
needs
FC
to get a lot
Dallas
of
is,
space.
yeah, no, they're sort of a particular case, like you said, the way they play, the way they approach the games, their philosophy, and that's probably down to a couple of things because their sporting director is, I think it's Fernando Clavijo, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, and actually there was a dude from because they have the Dallas Cup going on right now, Juan,
That's right.
in Dallas, and that was a guy from the Mexican national team, and I knew he wasn't from the. I know he was wearing the jacket, but he was a dead giveaway because the dude you could smell him, 10 miles away because of all the cologne he was wearing. So I knew he was actually from Mexico. But no, but it's
Isn't
go ahead, Juan.
one of the interesting things about or whatever, are they FC Dallas or Dallas FC?
FC Dallas.
But don't they have the highest
Yeah, they have
as
the highest
well?
rate of players that they've actually developed themselves playing for their team. Is that what you were trying to say? Like they have more players that have come up through the ranks than anybody else. Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing about FC Dallas. I mean, their goalie, who's actually Mexico's U20 goalie, Jesse Gonzalez, the dude is good, and he is dirt. He's available dirt cheap. So if there's a team in Mexico that needs a goalkeeper, I would definitely turn my eye toward this kid because
Yeah, that's
he
probably going to be his
very
Hey,
next
talented.
step, to be
Jolie
honest. He's probably going to have to slow down in
Chivas.
Mexico. Um, but what you were saying before is they do have a tremendous, I think, one of the best academies in MLS. If I'm not mistaken, their under 16s yesterday beat the Mexican under 17 national team in the Dallas Cup. But like anything, the issues with developing players and the whole run the whole gamut here in America is it's a different animal. And if anything, FC Dallas could be sort of that beacon of light and maybe show other teams how to run their academies. I know that the Red Bulls here in New York have made a really, really intense investment into their academy, and they have a couple of players that are on the first team that came from the academy. One of them just got sold or transferred to Manchester United. Matthew Olasande, who was part of the U.S. national team at the Under 17 World Cup. So there is movement, there is progress, but I feel like Rome wasn't built in one day, kind of thing here with the development system. But FC Dallas does definitely have they're definitely the standard bearers, I think, as of right now.
You're right. It's going to take time, and I think that one thing that I think all of us will agree on is that MLS, they can't just rely on the colleges to be the players, because I mean those kids are going to come from the elite camps and the elite teams, etc. Or the club team, whatever it is, the selects, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Where you have, I mean, Juan will tell us, you have to pump a bunch of money into that if you want your kid to go through that ranks. It seems like FC Dallas and some of these other teams are starting to plug kids, not necessarily from those select schools, maybe kids that don't have the financial backing that others might. And it seems like, if other teams can start tapping into that, then I think we'll start seeing MLS. They want to say they want to be one of the best leagues by 2022. They need to push that out to like 2032, 2042. It's going to take a while. It's not going to be in 5 years. It's just not going to happen. Anybody else have any other MLS thoughts, questions before we move on?
I just want to say that I don't think the league favors Giovanni Dos Santos at all, just his style. And the reason I bring this up is there's a kid on one of my kids' teams that he has a similar body type as far as that what's that called, the type 2 muscle fibers for the explosiveness, and he suffers the similar injuries that Giovanni suffers a lot. And I think this league, because it doesn't have any pausa, like it's constantly like 100 miles per hour.
Yeah, very vertical.
Yeah, it's very vertical. It's you're gonna have Giovanni getting hurt a lot, and for example, the Galaxy, like they have 3 injured players in like 3 games, I think.
Well, I think that Giovanni's listening to us right now. He's putting the kibosh on one signal. Now, one of the things that we talked about last week, Christian, you weren't with us last week.
That's right.
But it was a topic that Joel wanted us to address this week, and I think it's something that is very very interesting topic, especially when it comes to the national team. And Joel, I don't know. I see that you're on. I don't know if you're going to be able to listen to us or not, but I do see that you're on. I see that you're on.
I'm here, John.
He's making, hey, there's Joel. And one of the topics that we wanted to talk about was how is Mexico going to handle the generational change from this group of players that are going to be either at their peak or on the downside of their peak going into Russia 2018. Who is going to take the mantle from them?
If you don't mind me going first, I'll take a crack at it. I've sort of alluded to this before, but I do feel like the generational change, for the most part, already took place over the past 2 years. Not in every position, obviously, but I feel like at least the core of the team will be together for yet another World Cup after 2018. I think that we'll be well covered in that sense. I mean, as far as I think one of the biggest worries, at least for me as a fan, was in 2012 when we saw what the Olympic team did. And obviously, without getting too ahead of myself, you sort of think about what the next 4 years are going to bring and what the next Olympic team is going to be like. I felt like the 2012 Olympic team had a really good balance of talent and projection and even players that we kind of knew were not going to be full national team players, like, for example, Darwin Chavez. And if you look at some of the guys that were sort of standouts in that team, all of them have pretty much transitioned more or less to the senior national team. Marco Fabian, Herrera, Diego Reyes, even a guy like Nestor Araujo is now sort of coming back around into the picture. Israel Jimenez was a guy that I wasn't fully sure could make that transition, even to the professional level, but he's done it really well. So if you look at those guys and now you look at, with the current team, what it is now, if you look at the right backs, for example, obviously Paul Aguilar is hands down the best. I don't think there's any question about that, But if he was not available, I don't think that Israel Jimenez would be that much of a drop-off quality-wise, both offensively and defensively. I feel like Nestor Araujo has also quietly sort of put himself back in the map, and I'm glad Osorio has, sort of kept his eyes on him and actually included him in this roster that we have now. As far as the actual generational change, I mean, we're looking at players like Guardado, who's probably going to be exiting the picture.
He's gonna be 31.
Maybe Hector Moreno after this World Cup won't be
Well,
the
let's look at
standard
that.
guy in the defense, but there are guys that are coming up behind. Salcedo.
Guardado's gonna be 31. Moreno's and Chicharito and Giovanni and Vela and all those guys, they're gonna be 28, 29.
Yeah, and I think like what we've seen. I mean, for the most part, this 2014 World Cup cycle was Vela less. We just didn't have him around, and even going forward, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Carlos Vela. He's by far my favorite player from that generation as far as ability and skill goes. But we're pretty much accustomed to the idea of not having him around. So I'm not entirely sure that. I mean, I'm not sure that's going to be a huge drop off. The only issue I think is the mold of the players that are coming up. The kind of like what do they bring into the table? There's a lot of guys that are coming up that are very, very skillful and very direct, but maybe we don't have that same sort of Vela qualities where guys that can sort of slow things down and be offensively a playmaker and a guy that can score goals. So, but I also feel like, honestly, I feel like those questions will answer themselves, and if nothing else, we can look forward to guys coming up through the ranks that are not really part of the picture right now, much like Herrera did.
Hey,
Is trophies on the radar now? El trophies?
He should be. I think he should be.
El trophies?
Yeah.
I thought it was La Trophies.
Not trophies?
Not trophies. Not trophies.
Lozano and
No, I'm just trying to take a jab at Holy because it always happens. There's a player from Chivas that has an outstanding game,
From where?
and then next thing you know, boom, the press is all over him like he's the next star.
Yeah, that's true. I feel
it happened to what's his name?
a todos. Marco Fabian.
Fabian.
We
It
got
happened
Chico Ávila.
what's his name? Jair Garcia. What's his name? Jesus.
It happened to Misael Espinosa.
No, Jair.
Jair
Jair
Pereira, güey.
Yeah.
Defender? Jair Pereira.
Yeah, but
It happened. Now, I remember Joel used to love Eduardo Isella. He wanted that. Do you remember that, Joel?
He was good at discipline.
Yeah,
He had
he also-
discipline problems. He actually got called into the national team when Mesa was the coach, and in one of the first practices he got into a fight, fisticuffs.
Didn't you also want Roberto Nurse in Chile?
I did. Chocomiquiano the team.
What about Melvin Brown?
Melvin Brown. Yeah, we already saw the quote.
I think we've gotten off topic though.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay, so no, Joel, you were very concerned last week about, it's something that we see every 4 years.
Yeah.
It seems like,
You-
they have like a 2 or 3 year project,
To-
and then after that, I mean, and especially this one because like we mentioned, there's a bunch of dudes that are going to be between 28 and 31. So this is it. This is I mean,
you-
we don't
you
want to
know-
rely on these guys anymore.
That's right, John. And you need the new crop of players that are going to challenge some of the players that become the inamovibles.
Now, do you think
The way we saw Torrado and some of these other guys, huh?
No, it's funny you mentioned Torrado because I don't know how many times people just trashed Torrado and Israel Castro like 4 or 5 years ago when they were playing for Chepo.
I'm guilty.
And I watched, I saw them at the Gold Cup 3 times when they played in 2011. And those guys, you know what, they may not have been the most skilled, but the communication level that they had with the rest of the team was unmatched. They had that team running. I mean, it was impressive. They were constantly pointing and yelling and telling where to pass and where not to pass, telling a guy where to move. And I was thinking about that when I was watching the MLS game. As good as Dallas's midfield is, I mean, it seems like, granted, I couldn't hear what was being said because I was in the cozy confines of the press box, but there was no pointing. It seemed like the communication was very limited. Now, looking at the list of the La Lista de Convocados that was released, there were quite a few, quite a few youngsters that that did get called up. So maybe we're starting to see, or maybe Osorio is starting to recognize that, you know what, I can't really rely on all these guys because, as good a team, and the fact that we actually do have a pretty decent spine for this team, we need to start finding the replacements for those guys. So we did call up. He called up Irving Lozano. He
Orbelin.
called up Orbelin Pineda. He called up the Rodolfo Pizarro.
Pizarro, yeah.
And
Araujo's not really a youngster, but he's at that age too.
Diego Reyes to me is some, he's still in his early 20s. Cándido Ramirez, he's only 22. So there are some young. Tecatito is pretty young.
There is, but it's still very few compared to the big teams. That those are the teams we have to compete against if we want to win something of significance. So if you look at Liga MX, I think the only top scorer is Mexican.
Oribe, no?
Yeah.
It's Oribe, and there's really no one else. So the majority.
I don't.
Lozano, of course, he got a hat trick. He got like 5 or 6 goals too. So.
Now, the thing is, I'm not a. Christian's I think a little bit more optimistic than I am regarding the transition, because I mean we can talk about Chucky Lozano, we can talk about all these guys, but they really haven't been the backbone. They haven't done anything really to win Mexico, silverware or the Gold Cup, or they haven't taken the team on their shoulders and stuff. It's still the guys that are in their prime.
They have less than 5 caps. I mean,
I was say they don't need to be
but
that important at this point.
Not necessarily true, because I mean you knew that Rafa Marquez was.
He got kept at 17.
Exactly. You knew Torrado was good, young. You knew that Rafa Marquez was good young. You knew that Pavel Pardo was good very young. You knew that Cuauhtemoc was good very young.
Guardado got taken straight
to
the
the World Cup. They're systematic about the caps now, though. They're not. They're being systematic about the whole process. So, like, remember, that's the reason you're getting this crop of players playing together since they're U15, because Nestor went in there, and regardless of his job at Chivas, at the national team level, he organized the teams. He said, hey, you know what? By the time these guys hit the first team, they've got 100, 200, up to 300 caps. So I think, at each particular age level that they've been at, they have been contributing. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but
maybe some of them.
The problem with that is that they might get capped to play in the national team. That necessarily mean that they're, and then this is something that frustrates me with the Olympic team, is that. Okay, so you have these guys that you've been playing for the Olympic team, but they haven't been doing dick for their club team. So what's
that's mostly on on the Olympic coach, which is I think there's some legitimate gripes there, because I feel like Potro does have like this weird sort of he sticks to his guys too much, and there are players that have been sort of coming up out of rising up, and they're guys that should be getting like looks, like for example the kid from Atlas. Garnica has been playing really well the last couple of games. A guy that fits into that age group. Chofis. These are guys that haven't really gotten a lot of looks, and you get Daniel Alvarez, who was okay last year for Atlas, but
I was fully expecting the kid from Monterrey. He didn't get called up.
Marco Bueno. I think that you have to look at it like the goal scorers. Yeah, Holy's got a point there. We don't have a lot of goal scorers that are coming up, and I feel like that's not only a problem for Mexico, it's a problem for pretty much a lot of teams. But if we look at the midfield or the wide forwards or the wide sort of extremos, there's a lot of interesting players, and I don't want to be too adventurous. I mean, Ronnie says I'm a little more optimistic, I will completely cop to that, but I do feel that it's these guys that are coming up that will push the older players if they're given a chance. The thing with Chepo was that Chepo was too slow to make that transition, and then when he tried to make the transition, it was pretty much it was just too much pressure, and it's not an environment that's conducive for the younger players to be that sort of that push that's gonna compete with the older players. I mean, I feel like what Osorio is doing now is that's kind of how you bring them in. You bring a couple in at a time and test them out. And I feel like if you look at the Senegal game, Pizarro had a good showing. I don't think Lozano had a very good game. He had a better game than Jurgen Damm, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think he did enough to maybe get warrant another cup, which he did. People were talking about Candido Ramirez and how he didn't deserve and this and that. And if you look at Monterrey, Candido doesn't start the league games for the most part, but he's usually the first sub off the bench, and he's been starting the Copa MX games. So he's been playing, and there's a certain thing that Osorio likes about him. At the end of the day, I mean, we don't really know how these guys are going to pan out, but, if like you guys are mentioning Rafa Marquez, okay, Rafa Marquez got capped at a very young age, but how much time went by before we saw teenagers get capped on the national team at that level? I think, 8 years before, are we talking about Gio and Vela getting capped when they were 18, 19, so I feel like those are exceptions to the rule.
No, I don't think they got capped early on, because remember, Hugo was trying to bring him into the mix, and
Hugo brought him in 2008 against the U.S.
That's right. That's their debut. Yeah, Gio and Vela, and actually for the U.S. it was Freddie Adu and Josie Altidore also got their caps, I think, in that game. It's one of those.
They weren't fixtures on the team because they had to go back to the youth teams with.
That's right.
My issue with Nestor's plan is okay. It's great. It's great that Nestor said, "Hey, I want to have Mexican coaches at the youth level." That's great. He says, "I want them to play as many tournaments as possible, and they play together." That's great. That's great. However, if those are the only games they get in the year, then that's not good. And I think that we saw that when the 14-year-olds that Nestor really, like the whole laboratorio with his plan in 2009, whatever it was. Okay, they were 19 when they played the last the U20 World Cup in New Zealand, and they went 3-0. And they were the first graduates of the whole Nestor plan. And my issue with Nestor, I think it's great that Nestor has that plan, but he has to involve the clubs with that too. The clubs have to be involved, because otherwise these guys aren't going to play.
I think that got abandoned long ago.
Well, regardless of whether it got abandoned or not, it's just very discouraging. I think but see, I don't think it has, Joel, because Mexico on the youth level, they play in tournaments all over the world, and it's great that they do. Don't get me wrong, but my issue with the whole plan is, okay, so you got the 17-year-old that's playing all these games, and then he comes back and he barely plays for his club, if at all. Maybe he'll play in a U20 game here and there. And it seems like if you're not somebody's cousin, or if you're not somebody, if you're not the compadre's kid, then you're not going to get picked.
But the coaching also, the way they were going about the coaching changed after he left. So even if the team went 3-0, some of the stuff was being done differently by that point when Iñárritu had taken over.
That was one of the issues in the interview he had. He said that the clubs, they were not playing the players, but I think if just going back to Chivas with their U17 squad, where they had Pato Araujo, they had Chori Mejia, and Chepo at the time, he was the coach, and Pato kept getting called up even though he was already a starter for the first team. And so eventually, once he stopped getting the youth call-ups, he lost his spot to Chori Mejia. And I think that probably stunted his development, even though he was one of the guys on the 2006 championship for Chivas. And that's why, like, when I see fans criticize the manager for not calling up a guy who's already on a first team, they're getting put in a minutes, they're a important figure. I just scratch my head and I wonder, like, what's more important, this guy to consolidate himself? Go ahead, John. Sorry.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, I look at that kid that in Monterrey, that Cesar Montes kid. That dude is terrific. He should be called up for the the big team, the senior team now. I mean, he is that good. He is a really and Potro Gutierrez is like, you know what? He doesn't fit in my plans. It's like,
well, you know why?
You don't have the luxury of having a guy like that.
He's been working with Jordan Silva, Carlos Salcedo.
Well, that's great.
Like Antonio Briseño for so long that he's not willing to sort of part with them, and that's exactly the problem, because 4 years ago, then I was like, well, yeah, I worked with these guys in the Pan American Games, and then he moved some of them aside. One of them being Conejito Brizuela. I was like, okay, this guy's not really giving what I need. Aquino kind of overtook him a little bit, and then he brought in Hector Herrera. Like, he was more open to the players that were coming up, because it's a very interesting age where guys can have a great trimester and then drop off completely for another year. And if you're going to stick with those guys, I don't see how that's a benefit. It's more, if anything, it's a detriment, And Potro doesn't seem to have that flexibility. And I mean, I feel like, we touched on this 2 weeks ago, the whole thing with the Twitter, the whole Twitter thing. It's like, I think that, I mean, I don't want to make a judgment on the guy. I don't personally know him, but I think that says a lot about him in that sense, that if he's willing to engage fans on Twitter and social media in such a pedantic way, I mean, imagine the way that he deals with the players, I mean, it's like...
Yeah. You're
Yeah, I think
right.
once you get enough and different things from Ronnie, you get to a point where you just have to you snap, man. You got to respond. So I don't blame Potro.
I don't know, man. I feel like whatever. It was unprofessional. I mean,
I mean, I don't have
I'm with John, though. I mean, Montes is a kid that should have been on the national team.
Yeah, absolutely. I have an issue with guys not picking guys who were available and who were eligible and who were killing it, and because the coach is like, well, I already got this. You got the Briseño, who Tuca doesn't even play in Copa MX games. I mean, come on.
I know. It's and even his, his style of play is just. I mean, you can pretty much sum it up by his play versus Greece in the 2013 Under-20 World Cup, where we ended up losing the game. He got spun around like a complete amateur, and then that's when we gave up the game-winning goal. I don't see a lot of improvement in his play. I really don't think he's a national team caliber kind of player.
He didn't play much.
I don't see it.
Now, speaking of national team calls, I think that it was very interesting today, and this is something that I wanted to bring up, where and that's something we talked about earlier on our G-rated chat that we have. I'm not part of the R-rated or X-rated chats that you guys do. I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
I don't want any part of that at all. But anyway.
Hey, Beto's the most vocal there, by the way. You'd be surprising to me.
Really? Norman, that is interesting. But anyway, so what happened earlier today was that there was a report talking about how Oribe Peralta, and of course, as the day moved on, the story did evolve. But it started out by him saying that he did not want to get. It's not that he asked not to be called. He said he doesn't want to get called, and it's like, don't call me up. I don't want to be part of it. And of course, the first thing was, well, it's because I feel like the coach doesn't rate me. And then it turned into, well, I'm a little tired because of the way I've been playing. I'm only, we have a guy hurt, so it's just been me. So I'd want to take some time to, it's Semana Santa. I want to take some time, the vacation. I planned a vacation with my family. Of course, didn't look at the calendar, but whatever. And then by the end of the day, of course, Santiago Baños said, you know what, we talked with Oribe and it's okay because we know what he can bring, etc. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so right now, all of our Mexico's top goal scorers, the ones that are on the team, that no one's scored in a month. Raúl Jiménez hasn't scored. Chicharito hasn't scored in 4 games. Tecatito scored once in the past 6 weeks. There haven't been, Marco Fabian hasn't even scored a goal since he's been in the Bundesliga.
Lalo Herrera?
Lalo Herrera, he misses penalties left and right.
Yeah.
So my question is, Oribe Peralta, if you don't rate him, it doesn't matter because the dude score goals. And here's my thing. People say, well, why isn't the press attacking Oribe Peralta the way that they attacked Carlos Vela when he said no? Well, here's the huge
golden child.
Well, here's the huge difference. Is that Oribe Peralta, in my opinion, has earned the right to say no because of everything he has done for the national team since 2011 on. The goals, the amount of goals he's scored, the amount of important goals he's scored, the huge goals he scored for the national team. Carlos Vela, on the other hand,
how old will he be?
Oribe, I think
sorry,
he's
John.
30 now. I think he's 30 or 31 right now.
31, yeah. Actually, 32.
Yeah.
No?
Well, I'm not sure.
He's
31 or 32.
I want to cut him up and count the rings, but I'm not sure.
So it says January 12, 84. So he's 32, and by the time Russia rolls around, well, that's what 2 more years. He'll be 34.
But you know what? That's fine. I have no issue with that. Remember, Ricardo Peláez was 34 when he played in France, and that dude scored probably the biggest goals in Mexico's World Cup history.
Well, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear why Osorio doesn't quite rate Oribe. And in a way, it's just weird, but I kind of agree with him. Oribe has a tendency to draw. He commits a lot of fouls because physically, he's not. He's going up against guys that are bigger than him, but he's very aggressive in a lot of ways, and unfortunately for him, a lot of these little ticky-tacky fouls sort of go against him a lot, and I think that
Dude,
Osorio doesn't
that's
like
her
when
music date at 10 because she has a pimple on her neck. Come on.
Well, I mean, I know it's a little weird. I understand. I just, I think that Osorio wants someone who's if he's gonna be the number 9, he wants him to compete physically at given times and win those battles. Oribe's not gonna win them, but at the end of the day, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't really care if he wins or doesn't win those battles. I care about the fact that he puts the ball in the back of the net. I mean, that's what that's what's gonna win you games. I don't care if Lalo Herrera wins all the headers and all the physical battles, and when it comes down to it, he'll scuff the shot.
Man, Lalo Herrera scares the hell out of me because I mean I've been watching. I watched his game last week in the Libertadores, and he had two. I wish Pern was here because maybe I should say La Volpe 3 times to swing conjure me.
Don't summon him.
But use the La Volpe charm. But he missed what I hate bagging on guys because it's not my style. But if you're missing an open net, I mean, you can't help to. And then the problem is that he panics. He just doesn't have that. He doesn't have that serenidad to just calm down and go. You know what? I just need to just tap it over here to the left because there's nobody there, and I can just roll it into the net. Guys that when they see what's in front of them, they know that they don't have to just kill it. And that was one of the things I liked about Bofo too is that he just. And I remember that 2007 Gold Cup when he had the chance to tie the game at the end. He tried to hit it as hard as he can. All he had to do was just tap it to the side, either side of Howard. It would have gone in. And Herrera's like that. He panics at the. He might win all the headers and do all these great things, but strikers need to be the guys that have to score a goal with one touch, and he just doesn't have that. And Oribe does. Oribe scores. He's like Chicharito. He'll score however it takes. And the fact that Osorio doesn't rate that to me is just
it's a little troubling. Osorio seems to think that he can sort of close that gap with Herrera, Guardado, Tecatito, Lozano, Chicharito. Joel's right. I mean, we had sort of an after a post podcast chat maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we were just kind of talking about the players and whatever, and Joel was just like, yeah, but where are the goals going to come from? And at the end of the day, he's absolutely right, But it seems like Osorio thinks that, with Guardado and Herrera sort of crashing a box and Tecatito and Lozano and all these other players, we're sort of just going to score goals. And, I mean, that's a nice thought and all, but at the end of the day, I mean, leaving aside a guy, I mean, whether or not he wants to come or not, if you don't rate him because he doesn't give you these extra wise variables, it's just like, come on, man. Like, we need to score goals. That's what wins us games. I just
You're right.
I don't want to make sense of it. It doesn't really make much sense to me.
We're all gonna get laid.
I love that part. No respect.
You're absolutely right.
I get no respect.
It's
My mother never breastfed me. She said she only liked me as a friend. Love Dangerfield.
Yeah. So,
I love Danger.
Well,
it's interesting about
just to
that.
chime in though, John, I
do have
personally
go ahead, Daniel, please.
Yeah, just to play the other side. I think so far he's been perfect. Let the guy do his thing. We've been clear. I personally think he's keeping in mind the opposition that it is somewhat weaker. So he is. I think on some level he is going to be half experimenting with the lineups, and I think even going back to his previous teams, that's something he was always notorious for, was that he wasn't really. No one ever really knew who was going to be in the starting 11. So that's just something that he's going to be doing. I think it's his style. I know if anything, he's proving to be really unorthodox. He started with the Layun thing, and then now we're seeing Moreno on the left. I think it's just part of his persona and part of his weird idiosyncrasy, where he's got his idea of what he needs to do in order for his vision of the game.
The bad
to-
thing for Osorio is that he's all from the first minute of the first press conference. The press was against him for whatever reason. I'm not sure.
well,
Maybe
that, and I think also part of the issue is that, and we may not know exactly how he means it, but by him saying though that he's always going to go in there with the intention of winning, and then he fields a bunch of, uh, you know, a bunch of center backs all over the field. So I think the media kind of latches onto that. I personally don't have an issue with it. I mean, if he suits up a bunch of center backs and we win, then obviously his strategy worked.
sure. No, you're. I mean, but like I said, is it his gray area is between winning and losing is extremely thin. So tell you and it's gonna. I don't know if it's gonna happen here. It's gonna definitely happen in Copa America. There will be a loss in Copa America, whether it's in
Oh
the
yeah.
first round and or definitely in the knockouts. I mean, I don't. I'd like to see Mexico as far as possible, but the press is they're just it's going to get ugly, man. They've from the first minute of the first press conference, and I'm not sure why that is. I don't know if they thought that, well, who is this guy trying to show us
Well, I
about
mean,
how to play
you
soccer?
kind of nailed it on the head. I mean, the moment that he stepped into the job, I mean, he wasn't what people expected, and I think he's pretty much a victim of expectations amongst the media and the fans. Um, but Dan's right. I mean, he's done a pretty good job so far, so he's earning a little bit of the benefit of the doubt as every game goes along. Even last night, he was being grilled about not bringing Oribe in, and then today the news broke out that there was some issues with Oribe. He doesn't feel like he's rated by the coach, doesn't want to come. He kind of opts out. It doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, Osorio has to answer for this stuff, whether or not he wants to, whether or not he's responsible for this. They're going to gun for him, and I think that you're absolutely right. The moment that Mexico does lose a game, which is going to happen, we know that. I mean, Chepo won what 10 games undefeated, 11 games, and
The wheels came off.
yeah, I think about 11 or 12 games, including the Gold Cup since he took over. And eventually, people just started turning on. That's just what we do, and that's what's going to happen. We just
But one thing we may not be considering though, and not that it matters, but I don't think Osorio cares much or anything, because I think personally, just judging by the types of players that he's calling, like the young players that he's calling, I don't think he's saying that the teams are weak that he's playing against, but I think he's saying that they're that good, and I think he's confident in himself and in his system that he's not sweating it. I think if it was a must win, we'd be seeing a different set of players being called,
Well, that
and
is
probably a different set of players actually playing. I think like like the what he did in Honduras and even against El Salvador, I still think like we're gonna continually see this evolving national team with Osorio. Go ahead.
no. I'm keenly interested in what you're saying.
Oh no, well I'm kind of done.
You're done? All right. On that note, well, it's funny. I do have people again. Carlos Vela wasn't called, and of course, because he doesn't speak to the press very often, people were wondering, oh my God, what are the reasons? It was because of this. It was because of that. He obviously doesn't want to be coming to Mexico. But I do have a quote from him, so I want to go ahead and play it from y'all and see what you think.
Carlos, ¿hasta qué punto te ha dolido que la Real Sociedad haya pedido a Osorio que no fueras con la tricolor? Incluso se ha especulado que esto entraba dentro del pack del castigo. ¿Qué opinas de todo esto?
No, para nada, porque antes de que pasara esto ya estaba hablado, ya habían hablado conmigo de la Real y me comentaron que iban a estar por México Loren, que iba a hablar con la federación y si ellos aceptaban, pues yo les dije que yo estoy a disposición de los dos lados, que si ellos llegaban a un acuerdo yo estaba igualmente feliz en los dos y que decidieran ellos, que ya no era un tema mío. Yo estoy a disposición de lo que ellos mandaran y en este caso fue quedarme, pero te lo aseguro que no fue ni por castigo ni por temas, algo porque pasó antes de que todo pasara, así que una cosa más de que ves como no siempre todo lo que se dice es verdad.
So there you have it, Carlos Vela saying that, hey, this agreement happened before my little Chris Brown concert incident that I had and then I lied about, which of course he throughout the press conference excused himself and he admitted to culpability the whole bit, and it was just kind of a weird press conference. I mean, what he said, the tone of it was that he just wants to be left alone. He just wants to live as normal a life as possible, and it seems like, especially at least in this side of the world, and any time that there's any kind of call up or non call up with him, they're just people are just constantly trying to find reasons, and no one ever seems to find it. And he also said he wants to play in Mexico, which I thought was very interesting. So, Joel, do you think that Carlos Vela will be accepted back to Guadalajara?
I don't think they could afford him.
No.
His wages.
Or do you think MLS is where he's going to end up?
Yeah, I think the lifestyle he could get in the U.S. He probably follows Gio on Instagram, sees his pictures with Kobe and other sports stars. Figures he could do the same.
So I guess my question was originally, should we expect Oribe to get trashed in the press the way that Vela was trashed, even though the press never, ever once got any kind of affirmation of yea or nay, just any kind of comment or anything out of Vela? It was purely speculation.
Well, Oribe doesn't speak with a Spanish accent.
So
right off the bat, people are just going to trash on him.
Why is that a problem? He's been living in Spain for 12 years.
I don't even think he speaks with a Spanish accent.
Well, he's trying to, but come on, who are you fooling?
I don't hear that at all.
You don't hear it.
Oh, I hear it. Why does that bother you?
Doesn't bother me. I'm just saying
I thought you were a fan of assimilation.
Yeah. I hear the way you speak, and automatically I can tell that you live in West Philadelphia.
But hey,
you have kind of criticized because of his accent, though, right? You told us
I'm so disappointed that Senator Regino didn't come on, because I built a brand new thing for him. I'm gonna play it for y'all. His Pern's, X list.
You, you,
You're cool.
That's awesome, man.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that.
I'm so disappointed.
Excuse me.
Maybe we should.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, they used to attack, Ugo for that, and I just think
that is so stupid. That is so stupid. It's like this relationship they have with Osorio. So, they trashed the national team left and right. They're going to coach. Oh, well, he's not worthy to coach the national team. So which is it, guys? Is the national team good or is it bad? Because
well, he's still not. Well, I don't want to say the worthy, but I don't think he's still. I don't think he had the resume to be on to be there.
That's like I don't want to sound like I'm racist.
He was in the federation's first choice, though, was he?
What's that?
After
Juan, you gotta can't hear you, dude.
I think Juan was asking. He was not the federation.
I just heard Dolphin speak and clicking sounds.
I don't want to sound racist. No, I think Juan was asking that he wasn't the federation's first choice, and he wasn't. The local was the first, and then they wanted to get the Sampaoli. He was like fourth or fifth down the list. And you know what? And honestly, what on earth has FMF done with the way that they treat coaches to think that any kind of coach with any kind of decent pedigree is even going to want to consider coaching there, because they fire him at the drop of a hat?
If it works for Real Madrid.
Was it sometime this week? Brody Campos came with I guess I forget on Medio Tiempo or Record, I don't remember which one, but basically he was talking about that he still has the desire to coach, but that unfortunately in Mexico, when they hire a coach, I mean, they're already thinking of ways of getting rid of you. So that's one of the reasons why he hasn't gone into coaching, that, because, he according to him, clubs don't look at things, in long term. So, and to a certain degree, I mean, to a certain point, he's right. A lot of these players, they don't want to go. They don't want to get into coaching because they can get something more stable. They can get more job security and stuff. Doing other things, be it TV, be it punditry, being their own personal businesses and stuff.
We need to get an ex-player on the Dos a Cero podcast. I think that's Joel. You need to work on that for us, man. You need to get Mauro Camoranesi on the show.
No, let's get Gonzalo Pineda.
No, hey, we can. I can get one. I can get one.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get. Are you gonna get Melvin? Are you gonna Chocomilk at our show?
Don't let them get to you too, man. Fight it.
Damn you, damn you.
No, that's terrible. I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry.
Me estoy avergonzado.
He's like the emperor when I can see him. He's like, yes, good.
Like Emperor Palpatine, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, very much so.
Through you, yeah. Okay. Well, gentlemen, I think that wraps it up.
Wait.
Wait. Hang on.
Fantasy item.
What is your major malfunction, numbnuts?
It's reality check time, Jolie.
Those young people are about to get a dose of reality.
You guys didn't let me finish when we were talking about the Mexico generational change.
I'm waiting for you to keep it real. So
yeah, I wanted to add, we've seen it in the past. Mexico going into the Hex, how much the team has suffered. It's happened at least 3 times that most of us got to see it with Ojitos when he was the coach. Just recently with Chepo, and then
in 2010.
Yeah. So, and it's, one of the main things that has changed now, going beyond Russia, is that Liga MX is using now more and more foreigners. So the number of foreign-born players has increased, and a lot of the owners are looking to push for about eight Mexicans per team. So, and if that happens, we pretty much know those 8 players won't be starters. We're going to be looking at 2 or 3 Mexican starters per team.
So you're saying out of the 27 on the team, only 8 of them are going to be Mexican. The rest are going to be foreigners.
Exactly, yeah. And he was on record, Luis Miguel Salvador from Monterrey. So he was talking about some of the meetings in FMF regarding how to improve Liga MX. So their belief is that Liga MX is competing against, the European leagues and Champions League, and so basically their main concern is espectáculo, to be entertaining. So they're saying their best bet is just to bring in foreign talent. And they said they had studies done and that they would be fine with 8 Mexican players per team.
Wow. That's not very reassuring.
Well, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen with that philosophy, and you're happening it now. But kids, as opposed to dreaming of playing with Chivas, playing with Cruz Azul, playing with America, they're gonna want to start dreaming of wanting to play for Manchester, Barcelona, Real Madrid. But dude, once you start having that sort of invasion of just foreign players, dude, you lose all identity. I mean, a club loses its identity, and it's sad. I mean, like when Arsenal, went to the Champions League with 0 or.
Look at what's happening to America now.
It is, and that believe it or not, that pisses me off.
It should. It would piss me. I mean, it's happening to Pumas too. I mean, I was watching the Libertadores, and they like 3 of their. Usually when you watch a Pumas game, especially something like when they bring in the cambios, it's like usually 3 canteranos, right? Guys that have come up from the system. Oh, he's making his debut. He's 18. Here comes this cat. It was 3 dudes from Chile I'd never even heard of. It was frustrating. As I thought they were only allowed to have 5 foreigners. There's like 18 foreigners on Pumas now. It's awful. It sucks.
Yeah,
So,
and you know what? They're using Chivas sort of like as an example. So they're pointing at the club and being like, you see, you can't compete if you're just using Mexican players. But I like to counter on that because you could see even though the team's not doing that good, they're not the worst team. So you have 3 or 4 teams doing worse with the maximum capacity of foreigners, and you'll see what happens sometimes when you let a lot of the youth players. Some of them will develop to be pretty good.
absolutely. And then I want to end our podcast tonight with a quote from the Canada coach, Nathan Fodio, who talked about how hard it is for him to arm his team in Canada and the obstacles that he runs into. And then if Joel, if what you're talking about could come to fruition, I think we'll start seeing that here as well.
Si en todos los demás países es necesario esperar una camada de futbolistas especiales para lograr algo muy maravilloso, imagínate en un país donde no hay liga. Entonces todos los demás entrenadores han debido tener muchos problemas. Y de cualquier manera aún no hemos conseguido la clasificación por lo menos para el hexagonal, con lo cual tampoco podemos presumir de mucho, ¿no? Pero es cierto que los chicos están trabajando bien, con mucha ilusión, y lo están haciendo pues en base a unos compromisos que hemos adquirido con ellos de hacerles ver que ellos son el motor del fútbol de Canadá, ¿no? En la medida en que ellos sean capaces de clasificar a la hexagonal, y de ahí a Rusia pues sería un boom especial para este país tan maravilloso.
So what you're saying, Joel, is kind of what he's up against. I mean, he has no league to pick players from. So if Liga MX increases the amount of foreigners, then what Liga MX is going to turn into is basically the English Premier League.
Keep in mind, I don't know. Hopefully, my connection holds. Keep in mind that every country that has won the World Cup, at least in the recent memory, especially from the European side, is they've had probably very strong domestic leagues where, they like Germany doesn't have a cap on foreigners. I believe the Netherlands doesn't have a cap of foreigners. They've been in contention like every World Cup. Spain, they got the European Union that there's no cap on those players, and they still can pick 3 players from outside the European continent, outside the European Union. Same thing with England doesn't have a cap on foreigners. So I think we gotta really study this thing and see, hey, maybe it's not a bad thing to have the base of the national team playing against the future Agüeros and the future Suarez's before they move up,
but Juan,
before they cross the Atlantic.
We only have about 11 players abroad. That's very weak sauce.
But exactly, but now see, you won't have to go abroad if your domestic league is strong, if it's generating the kind of income where these players they want to stay, over here.
Yeah, but usually they unless if you're really good, they're taking a pay cut to go abroad. You do understand that, right?
Well, yeah, so exactly. So there's even less reason for them to leave if they're playing the best football around, and they're getting paid well. And if you're bringing in these top foreigners from every national team in South America, and even send a couple of Central Americans.
I did find it interesting today, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Juan, about the talent level we do have in Liga MX, and it's something we've talked about, as a recurring theme in our podcast. 46 players were called up for friendlies or qualifiers from Liga MX this week. 46. It's not bad. 46.
No, it's not. I don't remember if it was this past World Cup or the World Cup before, but it was also, one of the most represented leagues in the World Cup.
It was the most represented league in the previous Copa America. I know that.
Yeah.
So there is, it's I understand both arguments, and both of y'all have some very, very valid points. It just seems that if they could find a balance, I have no issue with foreigners. I think that some of the greatest players that have ever played in Liga MX have been foreigners. Obviously, I mean, it historically, as long as we've been alive, has been a league that imports players. So there's no, this is just the obvious next step. Now, where I think that we have to be careful is, when we see a country like England, and that's why I was pointing out that yeah, it has this great league, but their national team just, frankly hasn't lived up to the expectation that the fans have, or frankly that we do as fans as well, because England, we would expect them to be a traditional power, and lately they haven't shown it. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there just aren't enough English players.
Hey,
One,
let's look
one,
at
one of
let's
my
look at
one
the
of my
La
biggest
Liga 2010. Let's look at their top scorers. How many of them were actually
Dude,
Spanish?
Spain is an anomaly because out of the 23 players that were out of let's talk the starting 11, 8 of them played for the same team. It just so happened to be the greatest team that has played in the last 50 years. So
So what you're telling me is that Ronnie needs to become a Chivas fan in order for Mexico to win the World Cup if there's that many foreigners in the league.
I think so.
Hey, before you go, hey John, before we go,
yes.
Tell us about your experience at the Mexican soccer show.
Oh yeah, the Mexican soccer show was great. Well, after about I always will never complain about connecting here 20 minutes late ever again. And for whatever reason, it was very hard for Wiso to make the connection, but it was interesting because Wiso wants he has a very structured show, and that's fine. It's there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And he would just ask each of the panel, question. Okay, we're going to talk about the national team. You're going to take the defense, you're going to take the midfielder, you're going to take the forwards, etc. So I liked it. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fun. I hate to brag, but I was easily the best looking guy on the panel. So if they got increased views, I'm sure. But
do they do any
say,
any dick jokes? Do they do
no,
chocomilqueadas? Nothing like that.
It was a very very serious show. But I will say that even though I was the best looking guy on that show, I'm only the 6th or 7th best looking guy on this show. So.
Hey, this guy, huh?
Yeah. So, no, but there was no, I did kind of rattle Johnny Rico a little bit with the whole Americanismo thing because it's just so easy. It's just so easy to get under the skin of Americanistas. But no, it was a good show, and it's interesting because Naim Moran is a guy who is starting to get a little connected, so he probably has a little bit more. It's nice to have that insight because he's around the team, especially the Mexico City teams. He gets to go to the press conferences and that, and he's starting to develop those relationships. So he's starting to get a little bit more insight with that. And Wiesel does a great job. I'll be seeing him tomorrow. I'm going up to Vancouver tomorrow, so I'm hoping to have a beer with him and Tom Marshall somewhere in town. Vancouver's a gorgeous town. I'm really looking forward to it, and the game's going to be great. It should be a lot of fun. BC Place is a gorgeous stadium. I'm looking forward to that. I'll be sending pictures. I've got my mic. Thanks for sending my mic.
What is it? BB's what? Stadium?
BC.
Oh.
BCDs?
Not BBC. BC Place. It's not the BBC. It's BC.
Yeah, leave it to Ronnie to think about the BBC, man.
It was funny.
Actually, Dan was thinking about that. Dan was thinking about that, not me.
I was gonna say I was watching Real Madrid over the weekend, and what's that English guy who does the play-by-play? Yeah, he kept saying BBC, man, and I was just like, come on, man.
We need to get an audio clip of that then.
Yeah. He says it constantly. He's like, because I guess it's Bale, Benzema, and
was it on the
Cristiano.
BBC? So was the BBC on the BBC?
No. This is on BM Sports.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I know you wanted a.
No.
Never mind.
Anyway, as we were saying, so we really appreciate y'all listening to our show tonight. We will have a full recap, and I'll try and post some stuff on the soccerchronicle.com website from my trip to Vancouver. I'm hoping to take some pictures of Mount Rainier. Has anyone ever flown into Seattle? Because when you fly into Seattle, you fly right past Mount Rainier. It's very cool. So hopefully I'll be on the right side of the airplane for that.
Hey, what's that Fu Manchu thing about?
That's something we'll have to talk about off the air.
Wow.
I thought that was an internal joke, fellas.
That's an internal. Keep it internal.
Yeah, that's.
Anyway,
someone broke the rule.
Need to know about that.
Well, Christian, thanks for joining us. I know you couldn't make it last week, but
The
thanks.
first rule of Russell Camp.
It's been my pleasure, John.
Do not talk about the Russell Camp.
No, it was great, John. Thank you again, and I hope you have a blast in Canada. I really do hope you smoke a lot of weed, man. Just gonna throw it out there.
By
Well, I'm not going to
Christian, by blast, do you mean a descremada?
Oye, Joel, estoy casado.
Let's all gang up on John.
Come on, Joel.
Well, John, yeah, just
Daniel,
good luck over there, man. Have a great time. Say hi to Wiso.
I will. Chiquis, thanks for joining us. Thanks for keeping it real.
I think he's gone.
I think you're right. No,
He's asked out.
He's trying to say something. No. Juan, thank you for sending the mic flag. I really appreciate it, and appreciate your insight tonight, man. Thanks.
You got it, John. Thank you for having me.
Te me aplacas con ese podcast.
That's right. Chiquis, I don't know if you're on or not, but again, thanks for setting everything up for us here on the Los Aceto podcast. And Ronnie, as always a great discussion, and we'll be in touch as I'll set stuff down. Thank you.
Cool.
Well, this has been the Dos Aceto podcast. Thank you for joining us. We'll be with you guys next week at the same time, about 9 p.m. Central. You can listen to us live on YouTube, or you can catch the recorded version on iTunes. Please feel free to download it at your leisure. You can listen to it wherever you want. This has been the Dos Aceto podcast. I'm John Jagu. Thank you guys for joining us. Join us again next week.
I
think
You on there?
we are.
Oh,
Yeah, be careful because we're still live, boys. Be careful, we're still live. You need to...
Yeah, he's gonna have to edit this shit out.
hey Juan.
Yo.
You were saying how there's no problem in Europe. I think you're disregarding a lot of stuff that a lot of those leagues have, like their overall football culture, quality of the youth coaches,
Well,
number of clubs as well. You know, I think all of that makes a difference.
You know, I think Germany's the model to look at, man, because to me Spain is unique because Barcelona has a.
But you know what?
Germany
is small, dude. You could go all over Germany in 10 hours.
Try to refresh your connection, Juan.
Okay.
So it's easy for them to have to send people to the different clubs and stuff and check up on their clubs.
So you think what you're saying is Jalisco can do it?
Yeah, you could. It would have to with Mexico, even like the U.S. It has to be very regional.
So you're saying California is going to win the World Cup for the Nets? Is that what you're saying?
It could if they got their shit together. There's a lot of players here from everywhere.
There's a lot of players in California leaving.
But you know, that's not gonna happen because of the whole structure of the game here, where you have these leagues where you play 3 months.
No, what I was going to tell you is a lot of kids in California they venture to Mexico. They're
more and more are going.
Well, look at Ponce. He's from Sacramento. Wasn't Jesus Padilla? I think wasn't he also from California? You got some guys at Pachuca that are from in California as well. I don't know, man. I don't think we should close the door to foreigners. You know, it's like, okay, if you want to sharpen a knife, are you going to use the worst rock available or the best rock available?
But see, this is the thing. For the most part, we get more petardos than we get. We don't have I'm not against players like how we had Cardoso, Aguinaga, even a Cabañas.
What about Sambu?
Yeah, he's really good, but I'm saying.
Funes Mori?
I mean, yeah, those guys are good, but I mean, we
Carlos
have a lot Carlos Fierro. You have but you have the Bianucci's, and you have
Hey, but he's Messi's cousin, man. They had to take a risk.
Messi's cousin's roommate.
Roque Santa Cruz, Gilma.
Yeah, I mean, we end up with way more players that just you're gonna forget by next season, and then a whole new crop gets brought in. So it's like that's just hurting us because instead of having our own talent playing, we're giving opportunities to some of these other players. I think I was talking about I forgot who I was talking to about. I don't know if it was in the forums. We were talking about the under 17 and how good Mexico has been doing at the under 17 level, and I'm like, the irony of that is our players, they'll beat up they'll win like over Uruguay and some of these other teams, and then those players end up in Liga MX. The players we defeated end up playing in Liga MX, while our own players end up like in third division somewhere.
Well, Holly, you know that they're not going to do away with like bringing foreign players. So with the solution, and I think we talked about this at one point, and people were talking about maybe like putting a quota on, at least like the quality of the players. Like they would have to be national team players, or at least on the periphery of the national team, or if they're given whatever national team before they got signed by Mexican teams. And you can make exceptions, for maybe Argentina or Brazil, for players like that. But I mean, if you want to avoid situations like that, I don't know, man. Los promotores, o sea, it's hard.
Well, yeah, I think didn't Cruz Azul have specific issues with that, and maybe Puebla did as well.
Yeah, Puebla
with the management
to like just hiring the guys that have been around the league for a while, Luis Gabriel Rey, guys like that they're kind of proven in the league, so they slide them in, and that's what keeps them afloat. But Monterrey and Tigres seem to be going out and getting at least lately, like very good quality foreigners. But the rule with with people acquiring Mexican citizenship after 2 years, it just now they're playing as Mexicans, but they're still foreign players, and you can fill up your team with players like that. You can have half your team, half of your 28-man roster can be 14 guys that are just not native, regardless of whether or not they have a passport at this point or not. It's a tricky thing, man, but if the league sees it as entertainment and they want to focus on entertainment, then we at this point we just have to hope for the best.
But here's the thing: their cash cow, the Mexican Federation's cash cow is the national team.
Yeah.
So if they're willing to lose all the money for not going to the Confederations Cup, not going to the Olympics, not going to even missing out a World Cup, they need to think about that.
I think that's precisely the point. The federation is going to have to make some kind of investments to keep their cash cow going, because even though aren't the people calling the shots overlap, because a group of the Mexican league owners are really the ones that call the shots at the national team for the most part?
Yes, because there really is, aside from Liga MX now being a S corporation and the Mexican Federation still being a non-profit, it's still run by the same group of people. Meaning, the real people of power. It's still the Televisas. It's still Azcárraga. It's still Slim. It's still what's his name Salinas. It's still all the 18 owners. Those are really the main guys.
So I think the federation itself is going to have to implement a sub-23 league and maybe limit the foreigners on the ascenso teams, to kind of compensate so that because look, Nestor, his last run with Chivas, one of the things he complained about is and Jolie will state this too, is that the players, they were not ready for the first team. From the U20 to the first team, it was a big jump, and that like Chivas in the past, they had their ascenso team with now they've been using Coras to kind of transition the players from the U20 to get to first division. So I think and in the past, Nestor had also stated that the clubs, they were not giving the players opportunities. There was something missing, and I think it's that jump from the U20 to the first team that's missing. That there's no way to make that transition in how do you say, any kind of progression, systemic progression there. And like if you look at other leagues, like doesn't Brazil, like they have the B League, don't they have the U23 league?
They have Serie A, they have Serie B, they have like in Brazil. But remember, the Brazilian league is very complicated. It's very regional, and also, I mean, I know they have the state, the national. But
well, I think when you want to solve a problem, you got to look at how everybody else has addressed it. And, that's the interesting one. The way Spain does it in their where the B teams the highest they can go is in Ascenso League, and the B team is part of the club.
Look, you don't, if I understand that, I understand that Liga MX they want a global brand, but it's never going to be global. It isn't, because it's not because the quality is not going to be, it's never going to be great. It's just because, unfortunately, we're on this side of the pond. I mean, really, that's really it. I mean, Argentina, they still have a great football culture. Brazil still has a great football culture. Uruguay still has a great soccer culture, but unfortunately, the whole international thing. I mean,
can't
but
they
really,
just be a Western Hemisphere brand?
Well,
because if they're bringing in all these Argentine stars and you already got all the all the Jolies in LA watching them,
I mean,
yeah,
honestly,
I disagree, Ronnie.
honestly,
Though
I mean,
there's
honestly,
it could
there should
absolutely
be,
become more global, though.
what's that?
It could absolutely become more global.
You're gonna get globalization. You're gonna get globalization with your national team winning the World Cup, not with America winning the Champions League club or winning the
Wait,
Soccer.
Dad, how far do you think? Someone has me on speaker. How far do you think Liga MX is from being able to have players of the quality of Cristiano and Messi? Because that's the only way you'll become a global brand in their prime.
I disagree, though. And when I say global, or maybe
no, but you're competing. You're competing with those
you're
leagues.
You're not actually because. Would you listen?
Yeah.
It's really simple. What do you do? Well, for the single guys, what do you guys do all day? You watch league game after league game from a multitude of countries. Why can't Europeans do that? Their games are going to be on at a certain time. Liga MX games are going to be on usually at a completely different time. If people are up, why they're going to want to watch soccer? Why not be that league to be?
You know what? So
do you watch the Salvadorian league?
Club America should hire
no, I don't.
A Japanese player. They should sign the top Japanese player, the top African player.
Yeah.
That'll help the league.
I'm just saying.
If they want to sell it to other countries, yes, that's the way to do it. You have to get somebody notable from that country. But otherwise, they're not going to pay attention.
Look at
the MLS, dude. They're signing like all the Mexicans that want to retire comfortably, like Gio.
I know, and that's fine. But you know what? Mexico was there. That was Mexico 40 years ago. I mean, what Qatar, what China, what Saudi Arabia is doing of hiring these has-beens. That's what Mexico used to do. You know what? Fuck, who cares?
I still remember Bebeto going to Toros Neza.
Yeah, and you know how much he was getting paid at that time, dude? $300,000 a month, U.S. dollars.
And from Toros Neza.
for Toros Neza, and now then you wonder why the hell they were they're relegated.
That's why.
Dude, we even had Celaya had a couple ex Real Madrid. They had 3 of them at one point.
Well,
even though Butragueño he was good, but the other 2 guys, they had Hugo for a little bit.
Well, Celaya, but Celaya, believe it or not, they have that Celaya's ownership had Spanish backing, or from the Spanish Mexican community. So there's actually a reason why the Real Madrid players went there, like Butragueño and what's it, Michel? No, who was it?
Yeah, I think it was Michel.
It wasn't Michel and Hugo. One of the reasons why they went to that team is because of the Spanish. There was some key Spanish people there from the Spanish community in Mexico, and obviously that's why they went there. So it's not because they were making buku money, which they were making good money, but not Bebeto money. But
No, but I'm just pointing out how we've seen players from top leagues or top teams play in Mexico. I mean, we had Bernd Schuster. Didn't he play at Pumas?
Yeah, Bernd Schuster. But here's the thing: how many?
Played in Mexico.
No, hey, and I'll say this, and I honestly say this: and I hated them, but one of the best teams I ever saw play was the Boca Juniors of Bianchi. I mean, it was clockwork, dude. It was just they were like Pep's Barcelona, dude. They were just badass to watch, and they won a shitload of trophies. They won the world. They beat I think they beat Inter Milan over there in Japan in the World Club. I mean, that's when they had a young Riquelme, Schiavi. You had Chicho Serna. You had that Colombian goalkeeper. What's his name? Shit. I mean, anyhow, they had a lot of good players, but even with all that success of Boca, it's not like they became a global. Not like they became global. You know what I mean?
Who, Boca Juniors?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that there's
Yeah,
levels.
they did, man. There's, I knew people in Mexico that
global. Of course, we know them because we have Latin American ties. But I'm saying is that those players, that of course people know River and Boca, but as far as the team, it's not a global, and they won a shitload of international trophies. River played it, although they fucking got relegated and stuff like that. I mean,
but keep in mind though, a lot of that happened also pre-internet.
No, you still had internet in 2003.
I mean, not to the level it is now, though. I mean, you
could. You mean social media?
Social media and the ability to watch the amount of games that we are from just about any league.
But
that
see
that wasn't that prevalent back then.
But see, you know what people do is they'll follow the national team. So you follow your club. After you see your club game, you'll watch like wherever players from your national team are playing at.
Yep.
And you're not gonna are you gonna, if you have the option to see a Chicharito play, are you gonna bypass that to see the Argentine Clásico?
Not me, no.
I think it's the same. Like when you go to Europe, and you're talking about like those countries like in England and Spain and all that, they're not really gonna want to watch other leagues just because it's available.
I agree, but that's why my point is that if you're gonna start trying to sell the product to other countries, you have to be able to sell it to them on that level where it's like where it wasn't a coincidence, like it was odd where one day PSV games started being shown all of a sudden. It's because there was a need now. There was a Mexican player playing over there who was high profile, and then people wanted to watch.
But there's a market for that, and that'll be U.S. and Mexico. But
my point is that other countries would probably have a similar interest if you got one of their high profile players playing in your league. They'd be interested on some level.
I don't think there's that many people watching like Liga MX. They'll probably just French people because of Guignac. They'll probably just watch the Tigres or watch the Tigre recaps.
That's how it starts, man. How many?
That's my point. That's how.
How many people are Tottenham fans just because Maradona wiped his ass with their shirt once?
Yeah, I don't think.
And it's not about getting just a big name or a has-been. It's about getting someone who's still relevant.
But you know what? I'm gonna say this. I think with Liga MX, I don't think they're trying to target a global audience. They just feel that's what Mexico fans in general are gonna prefer.
If you target just the Americas, dude, you're on top. I mean, that's all you need. I mean, you really don't need that. You don't really need all those other markets because you have a huge population base.
It's not about needing them though. It's about thinking bigger.
Like BBC, BBC bigger.
Yes, más grande.
BBC bigger.
No, but it's just like, and honestly, before you can sell that, Mexico's got to get their shit together too, man. I mean, their image, international, well, just in general. I mean, Mexico needs to clean their fucking image. Let's be honest. They need to clean their image before we.
No more chanting puto at the games.
Nah, not that. I'm talking about the violence. I'm talking about the corruption. I'm talking about the lack of transparency.
Hold on, you're telling me that there's no politicians, like let's say the U.S. There's no corrupt politicians. There's no corruption going on up here.
What I'm telling you is,
nor everywhere else.
What I'm telling you is internationally, they're not always seeing the beautiful parts of Mexico. That what they're seeing is that they're seeing the narcs. They're seeing the hanging bodies, the decapitated heads. They're seeing the mass graves of women in the border. They're seeing that shit.
They're seeing tribal music.
Oh,
the pointy boots. Those long pointy boots.
Hey, but maybe Tom Marshall, he's helping, because now they see an Irish guy, and he's living in Guadalajara, living it up, dude.
Hey, ya hay otro inglés, ya.
Who?
He's writing for Food McSource, dude.
You know what?
Another Tom Harris.
Tom Harris?
Yeah.
We need to start talking with Argentine accents because for some reason in Mexico, dude, if you speak in a British or an Argentine accent, you have automatic credibility.
It does, man. But I just want to stress this point.
Pero son dado en dos mundiales.
No, I mean, I do think overall, the Mexican club owners, they don't have that much faith in Mexican talent. Which I think it's kind of sad. I think the talent's there. I think we could have. This is for me. It's realistic. We could have up to 30 to 40 players abroad. They don't all have to be high caliber, but good enough to be abroad.
Hey, Jolie.
And Liga MX should have at least 20 top players, huh?
Jolie, how much we've been talking. The channel we made where we just talk about Chivas. How much? So do you remember how much it was that Chivas has spent in the last 10 years developing players? Allegedly.
If Vergara said it, I don't believe.
Okay.
I don't know because I didn't post that, but I don't buy it, dude. I don't buy it at all. Vergara is just a liar, man. He'll just throw whatever numbers you know what he once said. He once complained about like
thrown around though.
No, I mean I don't know. It's hard for me to guess, but I'm just pointing something out that it was made public. So Vergara was complaining about because he wasn't buying players. He's saying they're trying to sell me like the average player as if he's a star, and he's saying how he's lost all his money, and he blamed Frankie, who at the point was like in charge of negotiating the deals.
Frankie.
And so Frankie replied, he's like, you know what, I got all the paperwork. We actually made money. He's like, whenever he wants to be on, I'll bring the proof, and we could be on air on any show, and I'll show that he's lying. And Vergara never responded, dude. He disappeared, huh?
What's the dollar amount being thrown around that Chivas invests every year? That not to criticize people's work. Let's just look at it from a business perspective.
It's difficult.
The goal was
you want to look at it from
every year. And what's the dollar? What's the dollar?
Hold on. You want to look at it from a business standpoint or a business standpoint?
Investment. Business.
Business.
They come up with some more.
Business is different than business.
The dollar figure being thrown around for Chivas the past 10 years is $80 million. that they've invested in youth development. Now, whether let's say maybe that figure's not true and it's maybe closer to half, $40 million and not 80. What have they reaped for that investment? So
You cut out. I didn't hear you, man.
at the other.
I think he was saying what have they gotten from that investment? Is that what you're saying, Juan?
It's amazing how he speaks that you can understand that dolphin speak.
It's where
I
he
was
grew up,
about to
man.
elaborate, and then I was like, oh no.
Hey,
stop,
you
stop,
know
we're still live.
the one thing I could add is that like if he did spend that much money, he's fucking retarded, dude. Because you're not gonna give away a Davila for like he sold him for like 500K or something, like less than $1 million to Chelsea. And so if you're spending that much money and you have one of your top prospects, you're not gonna give him away so cheaply. So that's the only reason I don't buy the whole 80 million.
In the past 10 years.
No way. There's no way you'll sell Chicharo for $6 million. He's like your best player ever, and you're gonna sell him for $6 million, and you're spending that much. That just doesn't add up, especially if you're a businessman like Vergara, dude. Like Vergara, man. He knows. He knows a thing or two about that. I think he's exaggerating.
So how much do you think he's really spending?
I mean, you have to take into account how much is spent on facilities and how many coaches, how many scouts. Without that, it's difficult, for me to.
So you don't
get
think
a
it's
price.
8 million? It's not 8 million a year.
8 million a year? No, I don't think it's that much.
So
Dude, come on, it's
used
Mexico,
to
man.
hate-
It's Mexico.
I used to hate Vergara, but the more and more I think about it, the more I appreciate him.
You have to like him, Ronnie. Ronnie,
For
you
his shadiness.
Ronnie,
You know?
not only that, he trolls.
I mean, he
very hard, man.
he probably had a tough paper route, dude.
Hey.
He learned a trick or two.
Americanistas should really like Vergara, man. He humiliates Chivas worse than anyone, dude. From renting the players for kid parties to hiring ex-Americanistas to run the club.
not only that, they had ex-Atlistas developing.
Nah, dude. Nah, Real is Chivas first, dude.
Where do you go back to now? Where's he working at now again?
I think Atlas wants him.
Yeah, I think he's going back to Atlas now.
He's Guadalajara based, so I mean, why would he want to leave the city?
So the figure being thrown out around by Chivas.
This guy cut off. Ronnie, what would you estimate it at? Since you lived in Mexico, I mean, you have a better understanding of wages.
And in those 10 years.
Damn. I can't understand what Juan is saying, dude. He's breaking off, dude.
That was too much for even me to decipher.
It sounds like he's an inhaler. Ronnie, I think you could have a pretty decent grasp. I mean, you lived over there, and a bit of good understanding of like wages would be.
Well, think. You had to take in consideration the travel and the kids. So I mean, if
Flecha Amarilla, dude, come on, how expensive could that be?
I honestly think that on the high end on a year, they're spending $2 million high end. In their youth.
Yeah, that's more believable.
That's on the high end. I think that more realistically, it's probably in the $500,000 to maybe $1 million at the most, and that's we're talking salaries, we're talking travel, we're talking the maintenance with the upkeep.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of these youth players, they're not gonna get paid a lot, and that story is well known with Salcido, who was gonna go back to washing cars, or I think he was working in a factory, and he was gonna go back to doing that because he wasn't making enough.
Mm-hmm.
Chivas when he had like a youth contract.
Okay, if he's spending $2 million a year, $20 million the past year.
Let's say there's 50. Let's say there's 50 people. Let's say there's 50 people across the board on the staff. Between staff and players. In the youth, and let's say that everybody's costing you 50,000. What
50,000 pesos?
No, dollars. I'm talking dollars.
Nah,
Yes.
that's a high wage, man.
Well, I know, but the thing about it is, with your wages, your benefits, medical, the travel, your per diems, all that bullshit. That's why I'm saying it's high end. That's basically 2.5 million, and that's not, and they're not making 50 million, 50,000, and that these guys, they're probably making, their salaries are probably going to be in the 20,000, 25,000, and we're talking about, your regular coaches are probably making about, anywhere from $18,000 to $20,000 a year, U.S. dollars, when the equivalent of. But I mean, I don't. What was the figure that you said? 80 million?
No, there's a figure being thrown around by Vergara, I think.
I don't buy it. Unless that money that he got from selling, what is it, what's the one that he sold?
Verde Valle.
Verde Valle.
The club. He also sold the I think the gym.
Yeah, the Verde Valle for which.
Sold the gym.
No, the Verde Valle.
What was it called? The club. The Club Guadalajara.
Casa Club. That one, I mean,
the one that was across the street from.
Shit, man.
And I mean,
that's where Jolie would do his push-ups, and
No, how much did he sell that for? He sold that for like what, 60 million? And I remember there was some, I think it got turned into some condos, and I think these President Fox's wife, kid, or some shit like that was involved in that deal, or something like that.
Yeah, I know they sold Tapatio too. So I don't know what second division side.
So I mean, honestly, for the money that he sold that, and keep in mind, and I made a point on this back in the day in big soccer, is that he sold it with Chivas de Corazon, SA de CV, the S corporation. If they would have sold that the way legally you were supposed to sell it, which was under the non-prof. That money had to go back to Chivas, but the way it was sold, that money, for all we know, Vergara could have, used that to pay, Omni Life debts or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is that he's investing in the youth teams. Is he getting it back? And are the other clubs looking at it like, hey,
I do think he does get a lot of the money back. If you think of the number of Chivas players across the board, it's a big number. I mean, just in Coras, they have like 8 or 10. The amount they have in Dorado.
Is Coras paying transfer fees?
Huh?
Is Coras paying transfer fees, or is just loans?
No, they're loans.
So
loans, but they have to pay the wages, huh?
Yeah, but so he's not making money on those deals. I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like the Cantera's not really producing players for him to be able to profit off of. Is my point.
No, but players.
The Cantera's losing money. Like the only one that got sold for anything was like Cheech, Gudinho, was it like $2 million, and then Cubo, I guess I remember
went for $6 million.
Figure.
$6 million.
No shit.
MLS paid $6 million for him.
Hey,
they were probably hoping they weren't.
Do you remember? You remember back in the day when what's the name?
Really?
Colibris went under?
Wow, dude, isn't that more than what Cheech for?
Wait, what? One at a time. Colibris wasn't Colibris Celaya turned into Colibris?
BBC's into Colibris.
Yeah, they transferred, the Celaya with Colibris, but do you remember after that whole debacle where that airline owner and his airline also went bankrupt, he ended up owing half, basically, if I recall correctly, the Mexican Federation stepped in, they paid half of the wages back, so the players didn't get half of the wages, they paid up half because they were months behind. But after that whole debacle, the Mexican Federation basically changed their bylaws that any new owner that wanted to go in, to get into
I do remember that they changed the laws. Yeah.
Yeah, they changed the bylaws and they required that you had to be liquid 5 million for a club. So now if you really think about it, on the low end, if you're like some team that just came up from the lower divisions to the first division, the Mexican Federation wanted to make sure that as an owner you were going to have enough to cover all your debts. So you think about it, a team on the slow end is going to be 5 million. So you know that most of that's going to go in your salaries. And you're talking about first division players and shit. So I know this goes back 10 years. You know you're not going to spend that much in your youth. So like I said, I have a hard time believing that we're gonna spend, or that number that's being thrown around of 80 million. I just don't buy. In fact,
I think it might include playoffs.
Now, in fact, I think they're making money. I don't know. It's been a while since I checked into it, but I remember reading an article that what a bunch of these Mexican teams were doing. The first, teams, they would have like these satellite type of schools, like in Reynosa and Matamoros and Torreon and whatever, and basically.
I saw one in East LA, Cruz Azul satellite school being taught by Chino Estrada.
Yeah, but you had to pay to use that stuff. Yeah. So it's not like
your uniforms and the logos.
Yeah, it was like your franchise. It's like they were franchising the school, so they were making money.
Now there's the Pumas one in Downey.
Now I don't know if they've changed their system now and if everything really is legit. But back then, when I used to keep up with this, I remember that the teams, first division teams, they were making money basically lending their name and having a legit, a licensed coach have a school set up, but they would pay a franchise, if you will, fee. I know they didn't call it that, but really that's what it is. And your kids would train.
There's dozens of those.
I mean, like I said, I haven't looked into this in a long time, but that's the way it was.
There's a Club America one in Long Beach, but I don't know if they're actually affiliated.
You're not taking your kids there, Juan?
You know what, man? That guy, he started a league. It's the biggest youth league outside. It's the biggest Latin league around on Sundays. He's got teams from like freaking northern part of LA down to Long Beach, Compton, participating in it. And he called it the Chucho Ramirez soccer league. They've even been like on some radio shows. I think they were on some radio shows.
Chucho Ramirez Soccer League?
Yeah, La Liga. Type in his name, Chucho Ramirez La Liga, and they even got a website now where they put the schedules in.
Is it like dodgeball when they go compete and all the teams are like?
What? No, man, it's like real soccer, dude. With their feet, not with their hands, fool.
I know, but you could tell where they're from just by looking at the players.
Oh, I see.
They're very stereotypical. He's saying teams from Compton. He's saying teams from Compton and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm imagining all this stuff,
No, there's no, no NWA or anything like that.
No, hey, speaking of like rec league, I met these two guys at the Union game, and they're basically they have this Spanish internet, I guess, channel or station, and like they already have up to like 15,000 subscribers and stuff.
Oh, snap!
Yeah, so I mean, guys from South Philly and stuff like that, and really nice guys.
Is it English?
No, it's in Spanish. It's in Spanish, obviously. So I just started shooting the shit with them, and they're telling me that they cover the local Mexican leagues here in Philly. And it's funny because when he's talking about that, I remember a couple years ago, Manuel Rios. Remember him from America? He to me, back Manuel Rios, there was like 2, 3 seasons where the kid was playing really good, and he actually reminded me of Cabrito Arellano because they were kind of like of the same build. But unfortunately, Manuel Rios, he won the championship. He won the league with America in 2002 with La Puente. But he had problems with I think with his agent and stuff like that, getting crappy deals. So there was a point where he had to play in Central America. I think he was playing in Guatemala or whatever. But kid had talent. But yeah, he was actually coaching in South Philly like a couple years back. So when John asked me if I was going to get a player, like an ex-player, I think I may be able to get a hold of him.
Cricket.
Is he gonna want like is he gonna want like, in a hotel room and board for the week? Like these guys out here in LA, Ramon Ramirez and Claudio Suarez, they're out here in LA. Enrique Borja too, they'll do events.
Do you remember when Ramon Ramirez went to LA, or who was it, Galaxy or Chivas USA or
Chivas USA?
Remember that one of the problems he was having was getting a visa for his maid. Do you remember that?
Oh man,
freaking bastard, dude.
It was his personal podóloga, dude. Hey, yeah, I went to see him play, and it was pretty sad, dude.
After that accident where he killed somebody, I think he just was never the same.
Well, didn't he have 2 accidents, right? Or was it the same one where he messed up his knee or his ankle?
Yeah, I think it was his ankle. He was I think he was actually driving to the airport to go to with the national team, or if I'm not mistaken, and he got into an accident, and unfortunately,
yeah, he was gone.
Well, keep in mind, I think if I recall correctly, I mean, keep in mind that it was an accident. A family died. I think like 2-3 people died in that car, in the other car. But if I recall correctly, some months after, the family was going after him, like trying to shake him down. So I mean,
but they brought him and Pulpo Zuniga, and Pulpo Zuniga was a pretty good keeper, and Zuniga got injured like maybe 5 minutes or less than 5 minutes into the first match of the season, and I was like, damn, and Ramirez was just hobbling the whole time, dude. It was pretty bad, dude, because Vergara just advertised Chivas as like, soccer is here, and we're gonna teach you how to play the game, and we're getting Mexican players strapping like flies in the first match. I was like, fuck. And a lot of the youth players they bought they were pretty bad.
Yeah, Jesus, that was pretty bad. Dude, I can't believe we're still live, dude. Are we still live on YouTube?
Yeah, we are, dude.
You should talk about Ritos.
I'm gonna bounce, guys. Take it easy.
Well, hey. I wanted to talk about the wolf and the coyote.
Okay.
Oh God. All right, guys, I'm out.
No.
Oh,
I definitely gotta take off, man.
Come on, man. I really want to talk about
I missed that documentary. I want to hear it.
Yes, I want to hear about this. Just give us a recap. Give us a recap.
He's gone, dude.
Oh, man. I was hoping it's as good as a Neanderthal documentary.
Did you see the picture? Did you see the picture that I posted?
Nah, man. I mean, it's
I don't think I'll look at Julie.
I was stuck.
Oh.
I was stuck driving all day.
You were driving. You're going from job site to job site.
Yeah, but they were pretty far apart.
Oh shit.
I'm out, guys. Check you
Oh,
later.
Yeah, they're
No.
at least they're like an hour away, but just it's very time consuming.
No shit.
There's a lot of waiting. It's just boring, man.
Hey, I didn't realize my brother actually told me while he was at the game. He actually went to the Galaxy game.
Doesn't he take photographs?
He said, yeah, but he's not doing it for he's not doing it for Soccer Chronicle. He's actually doing it for a Spanish agency. They're a big like Efe, the
Yeah, I heard of them.
yeah, they're big. They're like AP rooters and stuff like that. So he's actually doing a lot of assignments right now for my buddy. They're he's like they were doing photo shoots for like Samuel L. Jackson. They were doing uh, a lot of shoots. But I mean, they don't do just sports or soccer like I do. I mean, they do everything. They do commercial work. They do they provide content for magazines, for newspapers and stuff like that on a wide thing. So he's learning a lot over there with them.
How come you don't have him like give you some pics for when Juan is at the Galaxy game?
Well, keep in
Let him
mind
set aside 2 or 3.
he's using their gear.
Oh,
So I mean, he's shooting with a 400 millimeter because he doesn't have gear like I do. I mean, he's using the company's gear. So I mean, basically,
and the lenses.
yeah, he's using all the lenses and stuff like that. So I mean, whatever he shoots, it's for them, not for me. So I mean,
Tell him to slip some pictures on the down low.
on the down. Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to. I need to.
We had a guy do that for us. I'm not gonna mention names, but he was working for a magazine, and they would credit him, and he would pass on some of them for Food Mixers.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Oh shit. All right, well, man, I'll let you be, dude.
All right, dude, I gotta call it in too.
All right, man. Later.
Good night.
Hello?